What is up? My name's Simba Jones, and not too long ago I decided, hey, I want to try to make a podcast. Been a kind of funny best friend for a long time, but over the years I've not really made many efforts to engage with the community. I'm a little out of it. I'm tired trying to put this together, put the finishing touches on episode 1. I just recorded the video that you're seeing now, a first take, and realized that I actually wasn't recording and I took a picture instead. And then I was just staring at the camera, talking, and nothing was recording. I record with the front facing camera because the quality is better, but of course, you might end up just not realizing that you're not recording. Anyway, I've never made a podcast or anything before. The most experience I have with doing something like this is streaming. Making a podcast is a lot more work than I anticipated. Something that on the surface seems so simple. I said a lot in my first take of this video. I don't really want to go over it all again. It was a lot. It was probably too long. The point is this. I've not been a part of the kind of funny community, and I want to change that. But also, I have noticed that it can be a little overwhelming and sometimes difficult to know where to begin when it comes to meeting people, trying to engage. There's a Facebook group, there's a Reddit, there's a Discord. There's so many best friends that have their own podcasts, YouTube channels, all these things. And I was surprised, right? One day I went on social media and I would search for the hashtag KFBF, and there are so many people that proudly display that in the description for their social media profiles. And through that, I discovered the wide amount of people that do their own podcast and do, make their own content in a similar way to Kind of Funny. And it was very inspiring and very cool. And I was wondering why I hadn't heard of any of these projects. And I think the reason is there isn't really a place where all that stuff gets gathered and talked about. And so I figured, hey, why don't I change that, right? Why don't we make a podcast that is made for the Kind of Funny community by the Kind of Funny community? The idea being that anyone can be a guest on this podcast. Anyone can submit ideas, their own, art, can plug their own stuff that they're making and get involved. And it can serve as a way for not only people to meet each other, but to just highlight all the awesome shit that people are making in this community. The original plan was to upload this at the beginning of the year to celebrate Kind of Funny's 10-year anniversary. I wanted to gather video messages from the community and have people talk about what Kind of Funny means to them and congratulate them on 10 years. Not many people ended up sending anything in, and that's to be expected, honestly. As someone who's not really engaged with the community much, people don't know me. People aren't following me. People are waiting to see what this thing is actually going to be. So I got one person who was excited and eager enough about this whole idea to not only send in a video, but to be my co-host for the first episode of this podcast. The original episode 1 that we recorded is gone forever because, again, I don't know what I'm doing. I got the sources wrong in OBS. The audio was completely shot. It was not salvageable. I tried. It's gone. And it's a real shame. My co host, Brian Saber, is someone who I have not spoken to or met before trying to get this very podcast off the ground. We had only spoken in DMs, and we actually spoke on a call for the first time, recording the first episode, and it was great. We clicked, and I thought it was so much fun. It's a real bummer that no one is ever going to be able to see that, but you know, it is what it is. We make mistakes and we keep going. So, yeah, I know this is a long podcast, and I know this intro to the podcast is ain't short either. I I ramble, and I don't know how to cut myself short a lot of the time. There are no time codes for this episode. I didn't think about that, but hopefully that's something that I can implement in the future. But for now, after this, you will see a short video from Brian talking about what kind of funny means to him and congratulating them for 10 years. And after that, we will jump right into the podcast. Feel free to scan, jump around. We just kind of spend time talking about video games in general and really just kind of feeling out the vibe of what it's like to have a conversation with one another. That nasty voice in my head is telling me that the podcast is bad and that this intro is bad and that the whole thing is bad and that I didn't do a good job. And I know that that's just a nasty voice that likes to get into my head and cause a lot of self-doubt. But I'm pushing through that, and I'm deciding to go ahead and release this and hope that y'all like it, and hopefully we can keep it going and only keep getting better. I love Kinda Funny so much, and it's high time that I see what's out there in the community and help people come together and form a stronger community. Without further ado, here's Brian Saber and then the Guest Bedroom Podcast with the Kinda Funny Best Friends.
Hey, Kind of Funny crew. My name is Brian Saber, and I am here to congratulate every single one of you on 10 years of Kind of Funny. I cannot believe it has been a decade that Kind of Funny has been in existence. I want to thank every single one of you for what you have done, not only for this community that you've created, but also for the gaming sphere as a whole, because you guys are some of the most funniest, genuine, awesome people that I've had the privilege of watching, and meeting some of you have been a real blast. I want to thank every single one of you guys for not only delivering awesome funny content, being so genuine with the community, and just being awesome people. I want to thank you personally for giving me the confidence in trying to reach out and do things that I would have normally never done before. Um, like, going to certain gaming events, going to, meetups and whatnot, but also just giving me the confidence to try podcasting for myself. And lo and behold, I have been podcasting with 3 years with United We Nerd, and it's been so much fun. And it's been a learning process too. But hey, everybody starts somewhere. I can't thank you all enough. Growing up in the Bay Area, I have struggled to really find somebody to look up to, and it is so awesome that you guys, regardless if you've grown up here or not, have been such a great role model to look up to and be proud of. that you guys are doing what you do, loving what you love, and not being ashamed to show it for the entire world to see. And I can't wait to see what you guys do in the next 10 years, because I'm going to be here every step of the way cheering you guys on. So happy 10th anniversary, kind of funny. And I cannot wait to see what you guys do next.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the guest bedroom. Again, you might not know, but we've had a little bit of technical difficulties trying to get this uploaded. We did record an episode one already, but that has sadly been lost to time now, as there was
In
a
the ether.
there was seemingly no way to salvage that, but that's all right. We had a great time talking, and I think what that first podcast did was kind of establish of an excitement going forward of wanting to do this podcast, and we had a great time just hanging out and talking about video games. So yeah, we're gonna jump in and record another one. I'm SImba Jones, and I am joined by Brian.
Hey, good to be back again for the first time again.
Yep. Well, even though yeah, I guess that would be one thing to mention is like, yeah, before we jumped on the podcast last time, we had never spoken on a call, or we were just kind of barely getting to know each other. Um, and this podcast here will still be probably a lot of folks in the community's opportunity to get to know us. Um, but yeah, I think something that we kind of really noticed during that recording was just how it felt pretty natural to kind of get to know each other, because we did have that kind of our a shared interest already. We went into it knowing that we were both fans of Kind of Funny, and once we kind of got the ball rolling on just talking about video games, it seemed to flow pretty naturally, I thought.
100%. It's the analogy that we used was like, you know, you going to like any other kind of like function, whether it be like family or like work related or whatever, and it's like that feeling you get like, oh man, I don't really know anybody here, and I don't know if I vibe with them because like we're here on a professional level, and so it's just like really awkward. But then you take like any kind of like gaming meetup or like convention or whatever, and like you're surrounded by people that you know you at least have the base fandom or like knowledge of, and so it just feels so more comfortable, and so much easier just to like go into like a 2 hour long conversation with like somebody that you just met. And so I think this has been awesome. I'm glad to be back here again for the first time again. um but yeah, like you said, it was just really cool. Like we text chatted in Discord a few times leading up to, the recording of this, and then being able just to hop into a voice chat and then talk for the first time was really cool. And I think we had a blast.
Yeah, it was a great time, and I don't know. I think something maybe I didn't touch on as much last time, but something that I think I don't know. I think is worth mentioning is just in the attempt to try to get something like this going. Um, I was initially a bit discouraged, just because I, um, again, like, just like trying to figure out like who would be interested in browsing the different communities, trying to like contact people on the Facebook group or Reddit and whatnot. And while I was very pleased that there were a lot of people that seemed interested and were open to the idea, I did get some pushback, and it's kind of like sometimes it's hard to tell like who's just what's just like a random internet encounter, who's like an actual community member, things like that. But even people who I would probably imagine are fans of Kind of Funny and maybe do enjoy the content, there's definitely some folks with the sentiment that the whole sort of um, best friend idea, or like even just that name, that it's like cringe or it's unhealthy, and that kind of like speaks to a like unhealthy social relationship kind of thing of like, oh, you're not their friends and this kind of thing. And I think for the most part, I think even back, I don't even know, from the very beginning when I found kind of funny and heard them kind of use that term for their audience, I think me and I imagine a lot of people didn't, it's, I don't think it's meant to be taken literally, right? It's like we
Right.
we know that we're not their best friends, but that it's more of an idea of like trying to
It's
to build that community and like be kind to one another, I guess, at a basic level.
it's a unifier,
Mhm.
you know. Yeah, it's like that's supposed to be taken literally. Will some people take it literally? Yeah, but that's just, the world. That's that happens every now and again. But I do honestly think for the most part, pretty much everybody understands that it is like a fan, nickname. But then at the end of the day, like I can guarantee you, if you go on to like any like kind of fun, like the kind of funny Discord or the Reddit, YouTube, Twitch chat, I can guarantee you there are probably a bunch of people in there that met for the first time because of, talking in text chat every day for like a Games Daily or one of the other podcasts, or people met at a meetup from back in the day and they became best friends because of Kind of Funny. So it's kind of a wave to have people know it's like, hey, you come into this with like good intentions, like you are gonna meet like-minded people that enjoy the stuff that you like, and you'll be able to connect with like that much quicker than I think most other kind of fandoms do.
For sure. Yeah, I think especially like it's like I often forget that even that it's like that is the term best friend, just cuz like I think what really kind of rolls off the tongue is just KFBF, and having that like hashtag. And I noticed like in my attempt to kind of follow more people on social media and meet other people in the community, that that was actually one of the best ways initially, was to just search hashtag KFBF. And a lot of people would put that either in the description for their profile or maybe as the hashtag on just a post. And that it's specific enough that I don't think that that hashtag's been used for something else. I could be wrong about that. But like anytime I would search that, it would lead me back to something kind of funny related. And it's I mean, just initially I think it's neat the amount of people that just feel some level of pride to be in the community, and put that in their description. And it's like it makes it easier to find other people. And it's I don't know, it's fun. Like I think in the same way that uh I've yet to experience this, but if I ever like saw someone out in the wild like wearing a kind of funny merch or something, I would immediately go talk to that person just because I was like, man, like we already have like this very specific thing where it's like because like I think like some interests or like fandoms might feel a little too broad of like, oh yeah, I love Spider-Man and that guy's wearing a Spider-Man shirt, but he, we might not get along because it's
But
just
which
so far.
Spider-Man do you like? Do you like
Uh-huh.
90s Spider-Man? Do you like, video game Spider-Man? I get
it's
it.
and it's like I think kind of funny is specific in that just like they have a very particular brand of humor that I think you kind of or you vibe with or you don't, and that kind of like um I think perhaps uh makes it feel like a more kind of specific thing, not to mention just like the it is at the end of the day just a smaller audience of folks that they reach. And so yeah, like you're not likely to run into too many in the wild, at least yeah, not obviously. Like you would probably need someone to be wearing merch or have like a kind of funny smiley tattoo, because it's probably not necessarily the kind of thing that would just come up naturally in conversation. um
Hmm.
but yeah, it's been really great because yeah, I guess that would be something to mention of like that's kind of
the idea behind starting this podcast is that it's not always super easy to try to find people in the community and specifically engage with them. Like there's a lot of starting points. Like I mentioned, Reddit. There's a Facebook group. There's a Discord and stuff. But a lot of it can feel a little overwhelming. A lot of it can feel like, oh, these people are here and they're talking and they're kind of doing their thing. How do I jump in? How do I get in there? It can feel kind of awkward, and I felt that as a longtime fan who just didn't really engage much at all. Not because I didn't want to, but I largely just didn't know how, and I didn't really kind of feel like there was a smooth way to get in. And ultimately, my best experience has been on Twitch because I think the live element kind of makes for uh, I don't know, just like getting to know new people a little bit more natural. So like I
Hmm.
not so much the streams that Kind of Funny does themselves. Like I have been trying to catch those lives when I can, and most of the time, even when I would catch them alive, I wouldn't have the chat open because I was just kind of like locked in on the content. But even there's whole conversations happening just in the chat, and then
Oh yeah.
yeah, all the people from the community who do their own streams on Twitch is it's been really great to meet people there and to realize just how interconnected everything is. Of like even just after a couple weeks of hanging out, I would people would rate each other. I'd be like, oh, I've seen that name in chat, or I've heard that name mentioned on their content and stuff, and then they're mentioning the people that they hang out with, and it's kind of this like uh, piggybacking back and like, and you keep kind of like finding new people that maybe you've heard of, maybe you haven't, and it kind of like naturally sort of ping pongs in that way. And I figured that, well, that's definitely one way to do it, and there's several ways to get into the community that having some podcasts like this could make that even easier for people. Of like, maybe um, you don't know where to start. You don't know how to meet people. Everyone's got their own preferences on the kind of content they like to consume, and uh, this could just be a way to not only highlight the projects and streams and what have you that people have going on in the community, but to bring guests on in multiple capacities. Whether I definitely would hope that people get interested and we could have more guests on the podcast. But I think that there could be other fun stuff of people having writing in questions or sending in voicemails or maybe just sending in fan art or really anything just to get involved, because I know that even that sometimes can be easier for people if they don't want to be on camera or have their voice heard, but they want to still be involved, and sometimes that can be tough to feel like you're not really sure how to be engaged.
100%. And it's just another great opportunity, like you were saying, for people to, want to get involved in the way that they would like. And that's why I'm really hoping that the guest bedroom can deliver that to people in the KFBF community. Because, like, same as you, I sometimes have a hard time trying to like get into conversations like within like the Discord, and I just find it easier to just hop onto YouTube chat during, Games Daily or any of the other live stream content during the day, just because it's like you're there in the moment, and so there's always something happening. Like, you know, they could be watching like a special like reveal of some kind or a reaction, or Greg could just pop in with his Stars in the Bank briefcase and terrorize Tim for the upteenth time. Which, by the way, not to get off a tangent, but I just want to point this out because I just caught up with, I was telling you this before, I just caught up with the game showdown from this past week. And I, KFBF community, I'm going to look at you right now. I love you. You're all awesome. But you guys hurt me in the game showdown. Nobody in the audience knew that Arbiter was in Killer Instinct and got Greg the point. How could this happen? Please tell me. Arbiter was like one of the biggest things to happen to Killer Instinct when it came out, and nobody remembered that. I know it's a niche video game, but I got hurt. And you know what? That is fine because we move on. There, I said my piece. I had to get that out. It was in my chest. I had to let it out into the ether.
Hey, yeah, sometimes you just gotta let it out. I know nothing about Killer Instinct, so I definitely would
That's fine. That's
honestly
fine. Not
probably
a
would have
lot of people
skipped
do.
some sort of a question like related to that. Um, but yeah.
I think like the prompt was gaming franchises that weren't in fighting games.
Oh.
And Halo was the number one answer, and it's like Arbiter's right there. He's standing right there with his energy sword.
Did they
But
did they guess Halo? Like the
Greg did.
okay, yeah, okay. It's like,
But it was like that.
did he also
It was
not
one of
know
those like
about Killer Instinct?
no,
Okay, I was gonna say like I didn't know if like because sometimes even if you know as the person playing, sometimes you got to make that play
like
of
Tim,
like
like
I don't
Tim
think the
had an
audience knows.
Tim had an inkling, but like wasn't like 100% sure. So it just became one of those things where it's like, oh, they don't know, so it's like they're just gonna say the answer. But it became like one of those mic moments where it's like it's obviously the wrong answer because the community voted on it in Blessing's poll
Hmm.
that it got the number one answer. It's like, wait, what?
I always find it
Um,
interesting that like it's always just like a random poll that's just on like Blessing's Twitter. Like I feel like it rarely gets like retweeted by the main account or the other accounts. And sometimes it's easy to like miss. You're just like, oh, the poll happened, or like, oh, that's happening. It's like if you're not following
yeah,
Blessing, you might miss it
which you should be following Blessing anyway
for
because
sure.
you'd be a fool not to. But rant aside, uh, I really look forward to having the guest bedroom go forward and having more and more people like hop on here, whether it's like having conversations, live in voice chat, or sending messages, sending uh, just like whatever they want to show off what they've been creating is going to be really really fun. Especially just there's a lot of us here. Like, it might not feel it all the time, but there is a lot of kind of funny best friends out there. And, you know, of course, not everybody's going to be that vocal all the time, but hopefully, like, we can create, this space, the guest bedroom, to be that space for them. Um, so yeah, I think this is going to be a very, very fun experience for the both of us and for everybody else.
Yeah, I feel the same. I'm pretty excited about it. Something that uh, just crossed my mind is I was just thinking about kind of, especially just from an angle of getting the community more involved. I was thinking about like Fantasy Critic, and thinking it's,
Oh, yeah.
I think initially it would have been nice to start one with this podcast, but I know it's like we're still kind of getting this off the ground, and yeah, I definitely, regardless, think it would be interesting to kind of to talk about that every now and then, even from just a perspective of the main kind of funny one. Or
Yeah.
I did end up joining a couple leagues over the last couple weeks. It's been an interesting thing to see how different people run their own leagues, and something that I did
Mhm.
just want to mention before I forget is that there is a way, a mode, I guess you could say, to play without a league. There's like a, I forget what they call
Oh.
it. It's like it's essentially like you're competing against the whole site. So
Oh,
you
interesting.
have a
Okay.
certain amount of money, and it goes based on the quarters of the year. And so like, oh, you have the first
Oh.
quarter, and you have to um, use your money efficiently to like draft games that'll get you the most points. And so you can, what you can do is, and so in this mode, the games are priced based on like how many people have drafted them, basically how popular they are. And so like they're,
Hmm.
the games that are, something like a Monster Hunter Wilds is really expensive because it's imminent, it's probably going to review well, and a lot of people have put it on their team. And so you kind of have to balance like, oh, do I spend all my money on the really popular games, or do I get like a lot of cheap games that I think are going to score
Right.
really well? And then something interesting you can do is you can either just spend your money buying as many games as possible, or you can buy a game and then like boost it with more money, and it'll like multiply
Oh,
the review points that you're getting off of it.
it's just like doubling down.
Basically,
Okay.
yeah. And so I went ahead and did that a little bit too. I don't even remember what I put on there because like you do kind of start running out of like, because it needs to be basic. It basically has to have a date by this point, essentially, because I think the end of
Hmm.
March is when it like is considered a cutoff, but it doesn't seem to restrict you from drafting a game that has a release date of later than March. So I'm not really sure how that works. Um, that's a fun way to
How
get
do you
involved.
feel? How do you feel about your prospects?
It's interesting. I feel like the list of games specifically for that mode get a little bit more interesting just because, at least the way that I did it, is like, because I was thinking, I'm like, at first I just picked some popular games and um, put like I like doubled down on them. I just put like extra money on like Monster Hunter Wilds and stuff because I feel like that's gonna score pretty well. But then I thought about I can't uh, remember quite what the rules were, but it seemed as though like you kind of, because how it works is you have your limited budget. I think the putting more money down to multiply it is more so to like use the rest of your money, because it doesn't matter, you don't have to have like a full dollar or anything. You can like boost a game with just 20 cents and it'll kind of do the math for you. And so I think
Oh,
it's one of
okay.
those things where like once you bought all your games and you don't have enough money to buy another game, you
Hmm.
multiply, because I think yeah, like I would get a lot of points if I put like the maximum down on Monster Hunter, but I don't think it would be as good as just a fresh new game that scored well. And so
Right.
like I went back and tried to like um, get as many different games on here, and it got to the point where I had to just pull up the list of everything that had a release date before the end of March, and specifically those games, and then ones that I could afford after I bought the ones that I really wanted. Because it's like, again, with this mode, since you're just kind of competing for points against everyone, there is no like you can just get the same games as anybody. Like there is no games you can or can't get.
Okay.
Um,
Right.
and so I initially went for Monster Hunter Wilds and Split Fiction, because
Is
those
Split Fiction coming out that soon?
supposedly, it's
Oh
that one's definitely
wow.
a riskier one of like you could get delayed. In terms of like just like a standard game of Fantasy Critic, I definitely would be confident that it would come out this year. But in this mode where you like it has to come out by the end of the quarter, we'll see. I could definitely see that one being something that gets delayed. It's slated for March 6th. So
Okay.
we'll see. And then I picked up Citizen Sleeper 2. Know nothing about that other than like I know kind of basically what it is as a game, but I've not played the first game. I've heard great things about mostly Andy's thoughts on it of playing the first game and previewing the second game, and it's a popular one. It's let's see, I spent $22 on Monster Hunter, 21 on Split Fiction, and 16 on Citizen Sleeper. So those are like just
Okay.
based on like those prices are just like set based on how popular they are. So I think like, I'm not sure how this works, but I think you benefit from getting in early. So like let's say when the next quarter starts, if you just immediately start buying games, I think they'll be cheap because no one's bought them yet.
Oh,
Compared to
so
like if you
like
wait
it.
till the end, I think they get more and more expensive. But I'm not
Okay.
fully sure that that's how it works, but I think that's the idea of like the people who are really in the know or like really confident about something can kind of save money on a game, because I think there's a purpose to like when I'm looking at my publisher, like it lists the amount spent, because I imagine that if you go to someone else's profile, they might have spent more or less on the same game just based on when they bought it.
Okay.
Um,
Now, if because they're only doing it by quarter, does the like let's say if like you put money down on like a certain amount of games, but you still have like a remainder, does that roll over or does it
hmm.
reset?
I'm not actually sure. I'm not sure if it mentions that in the rules, but I imagine that it would reset, because I think, well, I don't know. You know what? I actually don't know, because I guess that could be a strategy of like saving your
Just like
money,
stockpile and then unload when like the next quarter comes out.
but it might also be a. Let's see. Let me go see if I can find the rules here. Lose confidence. It doesn't really seem to say. Like it's possible that it's considered to be like a separate, just like a separate
Hmm.
game or a separate round quarter by quarter, and it just like resets. Or like I'm not sure if like, because like right now as I'm looking at it, it says leaderboards 2025 Q1. I'm not sure if it's like only going to be separated out like that, or if there will be a leaderboard for the whole year at the end of it all. Like, and the
Like
rules don't
have it
make it
like
clear.
accumulate at the end, maybe.
And so yeah, I think that might be either someone who's played before would know, or like it might be something that you just kind of becomes clear when the quarter rolls over. Um,
That sounds cool.
but yeah,
I'll have to check in on that. That sounds fun.
I think just in general, like it's interesting of like I guess the other thing to kind of like segue from that of like I think to like continue doing this podcast, I think it would be definitely fun to start a fantasy critic for this podcast next year, and see what maybe audience members' suggestions are. Because that was the one thing of like, at first I was like, yeah, there should just be some massive like just kind of funny community one in general. But then I was thinking about it. I guess you can't really have just like one where everyone can join, because it kind of needs to be limited, because otherwise you just run out of games. Um,
Very true.
because I think I'm not sure the biggest that they've ever done, but I think for the kind of funny one, I think it's 8 people this year. Um, and the two that I joined from just different segments of the best friend community were, I think they're both had 14 people in there.
Oh boy.
And yeah, it was very interesting. We did you do kind of just start to run out of games, and
It's like you really have to rely on your counter bets.
yeah, and but that was the other interesting thing too of like not everyone chooses to run it exactly like they do on
Oh,
that kind of funny
okay.
does. Like, so one of them, they have it to where counter picks are just like they made it so it doesn't lock you in. Like if someone counter picks
Oh.
your a game you have, that you can still drop it. And I guess but the weird thing about that is like I guess it just stays as that person's counter pick. Like they don't have to pick a new counter pick. They'll just either get points or lose points based on that game, but you can still drop it. I think they just made it a little looser of like it can kind of get out
It's
of
not so much,
control.
yeah, it's not so much targeting somebody, it's more just like targeting the game itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you can
Okay.
definitely fall into that of like everyone counterpicked your games, and now you're locked in all those games. Like Mike, I think he had like the games counterpicked this year, but he was encouraging people. He did it to himself, um, which I think that was. I don't know if it's much of a strategy, but I think that was his idea, because he was like one of the last to counterpick. Was like, if I convince everyone to counterpick my games, I'll have the best selection of games to counterpick at by the time.
Hey,
But
fair.
and then again, like just because all your games are counterpicked doesn't mean they might all lose points by counterpicking your games if your games come out and they're good. So you never know.
It could
Um,
be the ultimate strategy.
could be. And then I think the other league I joined is very similar to just how kind of funny does it. But the one that doesn't lock you into counterpicks also has a mechanic called super drops, where it's
Super drops.
like toward the end of the year, if I think it's like a percentage based thing where like basically the people who are doing the worst in the league comparatively to everyone else will just get the chance to drop any game, like to try to make it, to
Oh,
try to like, because they don't want it to be like, oh, halfway through the year, you've fallen so far behind that it feels like you can't make it up and that you don't want to play anymore. And so if someone's like really fallen behind, like even a game that's come out and has scored and maybe lost some points, they can just drop it.
it's just like a it's just like a free get a like a gel get a free card.
Basically, yeah. To kind of like
Interesting.
make it more interesting toward the end, and so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I guess the other than just to talk about it in general, I think it'd be fun for, I guess, anyone who like audience members can talk about like the leagues they're in, and it'd be fun to give updates either on just how things are going in general or what kind of funny leagues is doing. Especially, I think that would be fun to check in on their league, because I don't feel like they often give many updates about it. Maybe let me casually like on other podcasts, but
Like
it not like a really true like dedicated. We're gonna have like a whole games cast about like what's been going on with that. It's kind of like
right.
more toward the end of the year, or if you can
Can
just like
keep
go online
tally.
and check yourself. But I thought
Mhm.
about it because I'm sure a lot of people's fantasy critics are screwed up now because of Earthblade getting canceled.
Yeah, that was a big deal this week for sure.
And
Very unfortunate for the team.
yeah,
Uh
it's a rough one. For those who don't know, I was like the developers of Celeste, their next game, and something that I um, found interesting is that like, because I think I discovered it initially like before even they talked about it on like Games Daily, was like I think the day before someone just posted it to the Reddit, and it was like from their blog, like the devs blog, and but it was just like in a blog on a website like that they run. Like I went to their like Twitter or just their social, any of their social medias, and they hadn't posted anything about it. It
yeah.
was just in that blog, and then I guess enough people followed that obviously it got out and everyone knew. But I just like wouldn't that have been crazy if like they announced it like a week ago and like no one knew because no one
No one's
follows
paying
this blog.
attention.
Um, but yeah, man, that was very honestly like it sucks, especially for anyone who was looking forward to that game. But it's I feel like it's a little bit, I don't know, I guess refreshing to say the least, of someone being so kind of honest about the process of like making a game, especially as like an indie dev, and being having that transparency and just kind of like letting their fans know of like, yeah, here's the issues that we were facing, and we, among other things, part of it is just that pressure to live up to Celeste, which is like
I
regarded as
know.
one of the best games.
And I just wanted to look it up just to, you know, give them respect. But I believe it was extremely okay games.
Yep.
That was the ones that were making this. Yeah, it really sucks. Like all the respect to them in the world, because there's a lot of game companies that would, you know, just try to force a game to completion, uh, and either, you know, wait way too long to cancel it or release it to like very subpar player review. Um, it's very unfortunate because I guarantee they probably put so much time and effort uh, into this game, but I'm hopeful that this doesn't discourage them into going to try to make something new. You know, whether it is something new on or else, or if they go partner up with somebody to do like a joint effort into making something. I really do hope that, you know, they, you know, like look back, see what they could have done different, and then kind of just take that move forward and make something that they really can appreciate and enjoy making.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's Um, yeah, I bet that they're definitely in the camp that few indie developers have found themselves in, of just having a highly successful game and then trying to figure out how to follow that up and respond to that. And you know, I'm sure they're probably in a different place than they were prior to Celeste, even just from a financial standpoint of that being a very successful game. And I bet, who's to say how well that did for them. But I could only imagine that regardless that they're in a better place just like financially than they were before Celeste, and so it's probably like a different energy to try to bring to a new game of like, perhaps there was a time when it was more of like, oh, we gotta lock in on this because we're committing to this, and this is we're hoping something that we hope to make a living off of, and like now it's like they've got other kinds of pressures just to try to
Mm-hmm.
live up to like some critical masterpiece and appease the fans that they had because not to say that they had no fans before. I know a lot of people like the Towerfall game that they did, um, and but yeah, I'm sure that that's just a totally different beast to have such a highly regarded game and to try to follow that up. There's only like a handful that I can think of that are quite as coveted as Celeste. And yeah, I'm again it sounds like while there have definitely been struggles that they are doing what is best for them and their mental health, and that they are moving forward in a positive way as opposed to forcing themselves to do something that they didn't want to or that wasn't working out. And so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we'll see where they go from here. Something that I was impressed with was like, was this last year? I think this was last year. I'm not super familiar with the event. I want to say it's Steam Next Fest. It's some sort of Steam event where like developers make games like in a week or something. It's like some sort of like
Oh
dev
yeah,
jam kind of situation. And
I believe it's yeah. I think you're right on that.
cause yeah, I can't remember if like Next Fest might be a different thing with demo based. It doesn't really matter. But they made a game. They made Celeste 64 in like a week's time, and I only know about it because Andy streamed it. And it was a 3D version of Celeste with new music from Lena Raine, which is like the Celeste soundtrack is like amazing, and it was just like so like for something that was created in a week's time, it was like really incredible to look at, and it seemed like a really cool little project. And so I think it definitely seemed just like some passionate developers, and well, it is a bummer, but we'll have to see what they do next. And yeah,
Yeah.
I guess hopefully the people who had that game are paying attention to their fantasy critic.
It's stories like this that make me wonder, wonder what Team Cherry's doing right now. Because because it I'm okay, just a preface, I'm not shitting on them. I like Team Cherry has been working very, very hard, and I know it's a very stressful. It's kind of actually a little bit of a similar situation because you have just like Celeste, you have a game like Hollow Knight that, at its release, it didn't seem like a big deal at the time because it's like, okay, it's a very small, Metroidvania thing, but then it turned out to be this big, huge deal that everybody loved, and it was like a very critically acclaimed game. And you know, you go from having a Kickstarter DLC, and then Team Cherry is like, no, we're gonna make this into a completely new, yeah, other game. And 6 years later, it's still being made, but it's just like it's that idea like the critical acclaim that you're not used to, and now you have all of these fans being like, yo, where is it? Or literally saying is like, hey, don't say anything at all unless if you're either canceling it or it's coming out soon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like the polar opposite situations, but uh yeah, it's always rough when, especially like when it's an indie studio that finds so much success so quickly, so fast, and then there's just all that expectation for what's next, like what's coming next, like is it going to be bigger, is it going to be better, what's going to happen. it makes me curious as to as we saw this year, Balatro was like such a big success, made by one person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do you top that success? Are they going to top that success? I have no idea. I don't even know if like anything beyond Balatro is going to be a thing, but it's that interesting situation that we're in nowadays for gaming, especially with all the issues with AAA games nowadays. Like how we were kind of talking before we start recording, just like the whole situation at PlayStation, going through all these plans for live services and then canceling like half of those plans or like out the gate or like even before they're like in full development and they're kind of in this weird limbo space. And then like Xbox is finally, after what, like 4 to 5 years of like the console of like the new generation, they're finally starting to catch their stride with, multiple releases a year.
Mm-hmm.
And Nintendo's Nintendo. Nintendo is on their own planet.
Yeah,
And
they're
don't worry about that.
charting their own
But
course.
yeah, but like what I'm getting at is like indie gaming has become a bigger creature than it used to be. Like indie games used to be like, oh, it's this little like very cheap game you find on like the Wii Shop channel, or PlayStation has their initiative for like these little indie games that are going to be popping up every now and again. But like now you have all these indie games pumping out like masterpieces and game of the year contenders, and it wasn't like that a few years ago. And so now there's all this expectation on small indie developers that a part of me appreciates that people look at indie games as something like that, but a part of me also wonders if it's going to be to its detriment at some point.
Yeah, that's really interesting to kind of think about. Of like, I think I think a lot of it comes back to just like what you are prepared for in terms of like success or just like exposure, recognition. Um, I was watching a YouTube video not long ago, just kind of talking about um, social media and like Twitch and like people who aspire to like grow on Twitch and how like just I guess from they were talking to a bigger streamer just kind of like who was outlining their success on Twitch and how like you might have a huge streamer raid someone who's very small and oftentimes they're not prepared for it. They don't know how to handle it,
Oh,
and not that's to nothing to be like ashamed of, or like it's perfectly understandable. Like it's I think no one really knows like what that's gonna feel like or how you might react in a situation like that. And I think it's when you're not used
100%.
to that level uh, of an audience, it can take a lot to not just kind of shut down. And I think it's could be very similar with these indie games, especially something like Balatro, where I don't know all the details. I haven't done looked into much about I guess anything that would be uh, public about the developer, but I know uh, they, I guess we'll say, like to stay out of the spotlight. I know I think they believe they were at the Game Awards, but didn't accept the any awards or anything like that.
Uh, so they were at the Game Awards. They had representatives at the Game Awards
Okay. All right.
to
Okay.
accept their award. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I had thought that they were in the audience. I just didn't want to go on stage. Either way, though, kind of same deal of like,
Hmm.
who's to say if that's just the kind of person that they are and would have always done that, or if it was the the rapid sort of success kind of coming out of nowhere and essentially giving no time to kind of adjust. It's kind of like a almost like the Flappy Bird where that just kind of
I, I,
exploded.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
And then very it's interesting to look at then someone. Why am I blanking on Supergiant? Developers of
Supergiant.
Hades, where I feel like that's a bit of the opposite story, where they've kind of been on a steady rise of like No game has really reached the levels of the first Hades in terms of like recognition and its success, but they have been making games steadily, and ones that are at least recognized and a little bit more robust. And they've definitely had a lot of games under their belt by the time that we get to Hades. And even after Hades being such a success, being nominated for Game of the Year, and being probably one of the best examples of what can be done with the early access model, and they seem to have just run away with that and are firing on all cylinders with Hades 2. I've not played it, but people have only had the most glowing things to say about Hades 2, and that it's just a bigger, better Hades from all angles, and they seem to be really thriving with the success that Hades has seen. But it definitely, I feel like, kind of just further illustrates that idea of like, I feel like they definitely had the time to grow with their success. And by the time we get to Hades, they've made a lot of games and they've had that recognition. I think that they were just really, it was almost like the like Hades was like, all right, like we're gonna just make the very best thing that we can, and we're ready for like to step into all that that could be. And yeah, I definitely think that plays a lot into it in terms of just like how quickly you grow and what your experience and expectations might be. But it's definitely an interesting landscape with so many AAA games either just completely failing or even selling millions of copies and still being considered to be not successful by the studios that made them, because they cost
Yeah.
however many millions of dollars, and we're not making that return, or we're not, maybe we are making a profit but not enough of a profit to make another $300 million game or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
it's interesting to see indie games kind of come in and shake things up a little bit. Like it's cool to see that. Yeah, I mean, it very much seems like anyone who has an idea and the means and the will to go out there and make a game very much can do it. But it's a it's a weird space to be in. Like I've loved video games for like pretty much my whole life, and I've always thought about wanting to get into the industry, but not really knowing how to do that. And then by the time I got to college and stuff, I very much quickly realized that college wasn't for me, and especially
Hmm.
there wasn't really many options in terms of anything video game specific. It was like either I have to uh, go into some program to learn how to be an artist, because that would be the thing I'm most interested in, or just learn like coding or something and then adapt that to some sort of video game related thing. I know
That's a
there are
launching point.
some schools and some programs that is becoming more common that places do have a more video game specific offerings. Even like so I have a half sister who's a lot younger than me. She's 11, and she even has like my mom was telling me like a week ago they had someone from a game developer come to the school to talk about
What?
stuff. And I'm like, wait, what are you talking, what? And that she was talking about how they had classes offered at middle school that were like video game related, and they have like Dungeons and
What?
Dragons Club and like all this stuff that wasn't available when I went there. I'm like,
Man,
man, can I go back to school? Can I do it again? Can I be?
we crawled so the youth of today could run free
For sure.
into their nerdoms.
Um, but it's really interesting. I would love to know, like maybe I will talk to my sister. Just like I would love to know what that younger generation, how they view that as a potential job, because like that's now that I um am where I am at, like I still very much love video games and have an interest in perhaps wanting to make one someday. But the prospect of trying to get into that and any level in any way is very daunting. Of like, I don't feel great about trying to make a game by myself, and I don't feel great about trying to get hired by some company because of, I mean, it tech in general, but video games specifically seem to be one of the worst industries to be in right now in terms of job security.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've seen it for like at least the past 2 years of, okay, how many people are getting, let go today? Put it on the calendar and just check them off.
And I
But
guess, and not even just job security, but just the how often you hear about things like crunch and just your general sort of workplace health and stuff. Like it seems like one of those. I guess very unfortunate situations. Maybe much like being a content creator, where like it's a specific thing that the people who want to do it are so passionate about it that it can be easy to, if you're working for yourself, it can be easy to push yourself too hard and burn out because you want it so bad and you're so passionate about it. And additionally, if you go to work for someone else, it can be easy to be, I mean, exploited basically because you want this so much and you're so interested and passionate about it that you're willing to do what it feels like, whatever it feels like needs to be done to either keep a job or get a job or go work at your dream company or work on your dream game. And I don't think it's like every person involved is like this evil entity that's trying to take advantage of these people's passions, but I think that it often just it's more of like the system now at this point is made to kind of have this specific workflow and you take advantage of all these people who may not be making the healthiest choices in terms of how much they work or how um, they get these projects done, but there's so many people willing to do that work because at the end of the day it's so cool to be working on a video game.
yeah, it's like everybody can aspire to be like video game creator legends like Sakurai, but then people have to remember it's like Sakurai at one point was literally working so much that he had to get like a portable IV bag to
Oh my
bring
god.
around with him in the office because he literally would not stop working.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I think it's I guess honestly like I don't know. I'm sure there's probably people out there making this kind of content already, but I would be interested to hear people speak about, I guess, what approach should young people or just anyone, I guess, who may be wanting to get into video games like what approach should they take, or kind of like a and just more ideas on how to think about it or uh yeah, approach uh doing something like that with, because it can be, it can seem very doom and gloom, but obviously uh even in with the current landscape, there's still plenty of people out there who are taking the plunge and making games and succeeding and um said, living, trying to live their dreams and make their biggest ambitions a reality. And I think it's yeah, like I think there may be a lot of ways or aspects to trying to get into game development that may not be as well known or as talked about, that for like that might be looking into trying to do that kind of work. I keep thinking about one of my favorite games is Cuphead, and I I
Mhm.
I I would love, like, and this might already exist, I'm not sure, like a full documentary on the making of that game. I've seen like some clips and behind the scenes stuff, but them essentially talking about how they'd never made a game before. They wanted to make Cuphead, and so they just quit their jobs, and their wives quit their jobs, and they like refinanced their houses, and then they just made like one of the best games of all time, like as their first game. I'm like, what are you talking about? And again, like I get that they got some help from Xbox and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure I'm not sure if Cuphead would have ever come out if it wasn't for Xbox. I'm just like, I can't imagine that they probably were given enough help to have the freedom to make the game and not be homeless essentially, and just continue working on what was a very promising concept. But it still just like blows my mind that they just like that's how it went about. Just like, yeah, we're so confident in this, we've never done this before, but we're just gonna like put everything we have into this savings. We're just gonna quit and jump in fully with that. And that can be a very daunting idea for a lot of people. But it's like, on the flip side, it's like they did that. They quit their jobs and they did nothing but Cuphead for I don't even know how many years, but it took so long. And then the DLC, just like it, doesn't help that everything's hand animated. But even
Oh
most indie
yeah.
games take a very long time, and so it's like you can either try to crowdfund it or try to have some sort of savings or try to figure out a way to do it so that you could do it full time and try to get it done, because like obviously the safest financial option would be to do it in your free time, but at that point, if you're talking about a full-time game maybe taking 10 years, then how long is it going to take if you're only doing it in your free time, and it
Hmm.
can be a struggle, I think, to try to decide. Like I feel like, I think a lot of this is like how I feel personally. Like I think for me, it's like it's something that I'm so interested in, but it feels like so tough to get in there. Like I feel very discouraged about like,
It's like
man, I'd love to make a game, but I just feel like I can't, and I don't want to go
it's
work
like
for a big
yeah,
company.
and it's like that the possibility is out there, but it's just like the starting point is like hidden beneath like this vague fog of misunderstanding and just like not knowing the best way to start, especially nowadays when there's so many different options to like make games. Like it's not just consoles and PCs anymore. It's like consoles, PCs, mobile devices. It's it's such a weird thing because it's like it's such a big, vast, you know, world that you could delve yourself into, but also it feels so small because it's like who do you contact to like get started on your journey? It's like such a hidden secret. I would be very interested if anybody in the KFBF community that is either in the game industry or is trying to get started to either come on the podcast or just like send us your story and like just show us like through your example what it's like trying to get into the game industry. I think it'd be a very interesting study.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. I think just more than anything, I think hearing more stories about people getting started or how they got in and or how they're doing in the game industry could be inspiring, because I imagine there's a lot of people who feel the same of like having a strong interest but not much confidence in it being a good route to go or something to spend your time on, because it's I think especially in the last couple of years we've I think heard about more just cancellations and setbacks than ever before, big and small. Whether it's something like Earthblade or all the obviously something like the games that Sony
Concord.
are canceling are kind of out of those devs' hands in a lot of ways. But then you have all the developers who leave big companies and go try to make their own studio and aren't able to either successfully release a game, or when they do, it's not, they find that it was much more difficult than working under one of these big studios and trying to get your footing with that, and thinking that they can just make this same kinds of games that they were already making, without maybe as much backing or protections. But yeah, it's tough, but I think yeah, it's like you were saying. It's like it's definitely a scary like place to be, but it's also very inspiring as well when you look at something like Balatro. Of like it's all it really takes is an idea and the willingness to want to see that idea through, and I think that like yeah, I guess that would be the thing to that I would want to say last about that kind of subject, is that like Balatro kind of shows the heights of what even a small idea can reach, but like, you know, there's so much room to be successful and have a fulfilling project that maybe doesn't reach the heights of Balatro. Like, right, like the not, getting nominated at the Game Awards is definitely like a lot of people's dreams, but there's so many successful small games that I think can really um, inspire people to want to, if anyone that wants to go make something, and it's Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's probably more so than any medium. It might be the creative medium that it has the longest, I don't know, gestation time, like from you trying wanting to make
Mm-hmm.
something to you actually being able to put it out there. And I bet that that's very hard for a lot of artists or developers to have something, and even if you've begun working on it, to be like, oh well, this might not see the light of day for another 10 years or however long it may be, and then just hoping that some way somehow you can see it through, and that your years of work isn't lost to time. um, but yeah, I think that's also something I'd be definitely interested in, of hearing anyone's stories who might be in game development, because I think more uh, more than ever we need to kind of hear people's stories and inspiring tales about people's experiences to inspire the next generation of game developers.
100%. Shout out to game devs making like doing their thing, making their dreams come true.
Yeah, shout out. I think it's I think that's a testament to how many people love games and how awesome it can be to make a game, is that you're talking about one of the most difficult things to make, and you've got all these people who just that's all they want to be doing right now,
Hell yeah.
despite all that.
Speaking of games, I kind of wanted to you know, since it is a big talking point in this past week and a half, uh Switch 2 was revealed, and I find it very interesting because it's a big deal. Like usually when Nintendo releases reveals a console is a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I feel so bad. Like Nintendo's gonna be fine regardless. I don't want to worry about that, but I feel bad just because for all intents and purposes, this was like the console people have been waiting for, but it's also the most leaked console of all time
Yeah.
to the point where the reveal isn't exciting to anybody. And I feel like it kind of it hurts my soul, Siba, because I'm excited. Like we kind of talked about this last time we had a conversation where it's like Nintendo was like my first console, right? And so I always have a soft spot for Nintendo in my heart. And to, you know, get to this point in time where now we know what the Switch 2 actually is and what it looks like. Like we don't know what it does yet. Well, that's for, later down the line. But like just comparing the hype that the Switch had back when it was revealed in 2016, I believe. I believe it was 2016.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Um to now, like I don't know. It just feels weird.
It definitely has a different uh there's a phrase I'm looking for. I can't quite find it, but there's definitely a different feeling uh about uh about it things these this time around. And I think, I mean, for me, I'm not sure how much the leaks actually contributed to that. Of like, I think this reveal, like if it was just the same video that we saw, but we just hadn't got any of the leaks, I think it largely would have been the same reaction of just because it is just another Switch. And I think that that is very, um, I mean, I think it's ultimately not Nintendo's style historically. They are often always trying to look for the next gimmick and look for the next sort of like way to push um, their consoles to be something creative and out of the box, and something that the other companies aren't really doing. I guess you could say that maybe the GameCube was like the last big example of like a safe, just kind of straightforward console that just plays games like the other ones do. I guess the gimmick was that it has a handle on it. I don't know.
It was so portable for its time. It had a handle on it.
Um, And then, but yeah, you look at the
That's fair.
Wii and the even not that it was maybe the best decision, but they were trying to do something with the Wii U, um, and
Hmm.
uh, and then we've got the Switch being such a revolutionary thing in a lot of ways, and I think it's perhaps it's I don't know if this maybe speaks to a new era for Nintendo of like because I didn't really expect there to be anything crazy about the Switch. I expected it to be very much just a follow up to the original Switch, but I was very much holding out for them calling it something else than the Switch 2. Just because I don't, unless I'm
It
forgetting
is kind of
something,
interesting.
I don't think they've ever called anything a 2 in their.
No, like you've had like illusions of like a quote unquote sequel console because like we had like the Super NES,
Mm-hmm.
and then like the Wii U was like a lot of people confused the Wii U for just the Wii with like a gamepad attachment to it. But no, like this is like as far as I can tell, like this is the first time Nintendo's made an actual sequel console, like a two of something.
Well, yeah, like I even because I think a lot of their consoles have been like very iterative. I think I'm mostly just I'm like latched on specifically with their use of 2 because they've always been weird because they I always forget about that it even exists, but they had the new Nintendo 3DS.
Oh yeah.
And I don't even know
Hmm.
if we count that as its own generation or SKU
No.
because I think I ended up looking it up the other day and I think there was like a total of 15 games that were like you could only play on that they weren't playable on a previous
What?
3DS.
Yeah, it's like the tiny little like nub of a
Mm-hmm.
thumbstick that they added on to the new
Like it's very
3DS
much seemed
that
like there could have been an attachment, not like a whole new console. Not that we really needed
what
the attachment. I don't know.
what confused me about the new 3DS was the fact that they didn't retroactively update older games to use the thumbstick because like if any game that needed that thumbstick more, it was Kid Icarus Uprising
Yeah,
with the hand braking claw that you had to like turn your hands into to play that game properly. I yeah, Nintendo's always been trying to like one up themselves as far as like how they do their thing. And I don't know, maybe it's just because the Switch caught so much fire that it made other competitors try to hop onto that handheld market where you have the Steam Deck, you have the ROG Ally, you have all of these other portable gaming devices that have been in the market for the past few years. To on a glance just look at the Switch 2 and then see it's like okay, it looks like a bigger, Switch. It has some upgrade like well needed upgrades. Like thank goodness the Joy-Cons are getting bigger and they have bigger shoulder buttons.
yeah. That'll
Thank
definitely be
goodness.
nice
But I think what's really gonna decide if the Switch 2 is revolutionary for like Nintendo standards is when we get that direct in April and they actually start going over, what does the Switch 2 do that's different from the Switch? Like we saw them tease that the Joy-Cons might have like a mouse tracking, like you use it as like a computer mouse. What does the customized NVIDIA like DLSS chip do for their games? Like what will we be able to do that you cannot do anywhere else, or at least on like any other Switch console.
for sure. Yeah, I think that is gonna be really interesting. Of like I don't know if the I mean I think the Switch will do very well just on the basis of people who already have and enjoy their Switch One, and obviously anyone who enjoys Nintendo exclusives. Um, but I don't know that. Well, yeah, I think just this time around it's going to have a lot more competition in terms of the handheld space. Because even in a world where um, Sony and Xbox don't make whatever rumored handhelds they could be making.
Right.
There's the Steam Deck and so many iterations of a PC handheld, and I do think ultimately that's probably still an even more hardcore device, especially for people who probably already have an investment in the PC space and have like a Steam library that they've already built out and things like that. But I am
Hmm.
interested to see like kind of how those things stack up. I mean it'll really come down I think to how good is the Switch 2 at supporting third party games, and then I guess I'll turn or
Yeah.
with that like how many third parties put their stuff on Switch and how well does that stuff run there because um I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of more people are eyeballing something like the Steam Deck, but yeah I guess the one thing is like I'm not, and we'll have to see with the actual full breakdown of what the console is. But I guess I don't necessarily expect the Switch to do anything that a Steam Deck couldn't do other than play Nintendo games.
Yeah.
I think that might be the thing, and it's I don't know. It's really interesting to just think about of like because I've got some friends who either have a Steam Deck or looking at that or and regardless they seem very much not interested in the Switch 2. Just because like a lot of them recognize and appreciate just like the quality and the power of Nintendo games, but they I don't know, like at least in terms of just like some of the folks I talk to, they seem very sort of disillusioned and kind of like over a lot of like they're like like a lot of them want to play some of the newest Nintendo games, but the one thing that kind of honestly it bothers me is just like I've heard not an insignificant amount of people talk about that they would rather just get a Steam Deck and get Nintendo games illegally, and I'm like and like
Oh,
I it's a different conversation whether we're talking about Super Mario 64 and like the new games, right? Like you can't just buy Super Mario 64, and so that's like a whole different ball of wax.
right.
But yeah, I very much don't like the idea of pirating the new games. Obviously, people are gonna do what they're gonna do, but I think at the end of the day, like for anything negative that you could say about the weird decisions that Nintendo makes or how they, keep having us rebuy all these games that they could just release on a storefront that they don't nuke and things like that. I think
WND.
ultimately I just I love games and I love just the stuff that Nintendo puts out and I want to support that and I understand that like you can't like the games don't get made if we stop buying them, and
Right.
so you have to support those new releases, and I think that for everything that you could say about Nintendo, their actual like just like first party offerings are, I think, I don't know, I think they're needed, and I think some of the best just
Oh,
like
for sure.
in the business in terms of just a I don't know, a more inclusive, I just like I guess family a friendly approach to game making where like anyone can play their games and many people fall in love with gaming because of Nintendo, and they still to this day make some of the most polished games on release that are just broken when they come out. And the only honestly
Yeah.
like other than like maybe some unfortunate things of like the Pokemon games, which you can only kind of half blame Nintendo for that because they're like not, the Pokemon company is its own entity in a lot of
It
ways.
is its own beast, and they do what they do for
Um,
sure.
but yeah, like really, I think the only real complaints you could have about the how their games run is just the power of the Switch itself struggling to keep up. But beyond that, I think they make such high quality, imaginative stuff, and I think I've wondered for a long time, especially when now that we're here with the Switch 2, which unless they're hiding something, it doesn't seem to have some big gimmick. I always wonder like how successful Nintendo would be as just a publisher and a developer, and they just put their games on everything, and you could just play Mario on an Xbox or whatever, and they just focus on making amazing games. and didn't worry about it. But then it's like, oh, like I definitely don't see that in the
But
tea
then
leaves or
it
anything.
wouldn't feel it wouldn't feel like Nintendo.
I mean, it wouldn't, but up until the point that you have a kid who played his first Mario on Xbox and that's all he's ever known, and that's just what it is now, right?
Yeah.
Like for all the people who come from a time before, it would probably feel wrong. But I honestly, I can't wait to see what it's like to play Halo on a PlayStation if that comes to be, or even on a
Well,
Switch. It might come to Switch too. The
yeah.
Master Chief Collection, that'd be crazy. I mean,
I think
I get a kick up of playing Halo on my PC with a PlayStation controller.
I think Nintendo is in a very interesting situation with the Switch 2 coming out because with all the rumors of like how like or not really the rumors, but like a lot of the leaks that we've seen about what the Switch 2 is gonna like have as far as, what their, processors like, what their the fact that they do have like DDLS upscaling with their like customized like NVIDIA chip. Uh so I think the Switch 2, in my personal opinion, has the perfect opportunity to capture the zeitgeist again, even though now we're in this age of like handheld gaming becoming more and more, maybe not mainstream, but like there's options out there.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Switch 2, has the DDLS upscaling, has the hyperspeed micro SD cards uh, available for it, um, and then has that third party support, which it seems like, at least from like with the reporting that I've seen, like third parties are way more willing to support the Switch 2, and like they talked about how they regret not supporting the Switch when it was coming out, just based solely off of their experience with the Wii U. Um, and if Nintendo can come in at a decent price point, because Nintendo's always kind of downsold their consoles,
Yeah,
like throughout because coming out, the original Switch was like $300.
I'm pretty sure that's correct.
So like even if like the Switch 2 comes out like maybe roughly around 400 this time, it's still going to be the cheapest handheld on the market.
Yeah, and it's
Because
the most what's the smallest barrier to entry? I don't know if that's what I'm trying to say. It's not going to be like the
just
Steam Deck
plug and
is
play.
yeah, plug and play. The Steam Deck is very much still like a PC in a lot of ways, where it's like the Switch is the console handheld of like it just works.
Yeah, and because that's like the same issue of like when I was like struggling, like, do I get a Steam Deck? Is that yeah, the Steam Deck like is really good nowadays, especially nowadays with all of the updates they've been doing and like the iterations that they have. But at the same time, it's like you have to still look at it. It's like, okay, well, is this game Steam Deck compatible?
Yeah, it's like
It's
is it
like, is
verified?
it like fully? Is it verified? It's like it kind of works on it, and then having all of the other kind of I don't know if you jailbreak it or not, but like having the other kind of gaming stuff on, like you put onto it. Um, but with the Switch, it's like just buy a Switch, buy a game,
Yeah, and it just
done.
works. And I think it's. I keep thinking about because like I was and I still kind of want one. I'm not as gung ho about it. I think I'm more excited about the Switch right now. But I was wanting a Steam Deck, and it's just like there's so many elements of it that aren't just as um, easy and seamless as a Switch because it's like technically you can dock a Steam Deck, but it doesn't come with
Yeah.
a dock. So you either have to have a cable or buy a dock, and then if you're gonna do that, you need to carry a controller with you because there's no Joy-Con situation. You can't just pull the controllers off. So if you are going to plug it in, you have to just carry a controller with you, which most people do. I feel like most people don't do the like dock
Oh yeah.
Joy-Con thing. Most people just have a pro controller with them, but having the
Hmm.
option is nice. Like if you're going on
Oh yeah,
a
for
little
sure.
weekend trip or just going to your friend's house or whatever, the idea that you could just have the Switch itself and not have to worry if you do want to dock it, you will still just be able to take those controllers right off and play that way. And it seems so everything is just there and it's all just going to work and be an easy thing. And they give you so many options with how to use the system of even just like I don't think anyone does it, but it's nice to have the option of holding the Joy-Con sideways to use as an extra controller if you really needed to. Like if you were in a situation where you had four
Last
friends,
ditch effort.
yeah, and to play one playing Mario Kart and you only had so many controllers, you would do it if you had to do it. Um, and it's like I think that is kind of still the essence of what Nintendo brings to the table of like they want to make the barrier to entry of gaming as like low as possible of like you can bring this thing with you everywhere. If someone else has a Switch, you don't even need Wi-Fi. You can connect with certain games and play like Switch to Switch, and do stuff
Yep.
there. And it's I think we're maybe moving away this. Maybe it's just my friend circles, but I always love the idea of like everyone having a Switch, and then you go to your friend's house. You don't even have to bring your dock because you could just dock it into their dock if you had like a game
Hmm.
loaded up or something that you wanted to do there. And yeah, I think it's just yeah, the third party support I think is going to be really interesting to see because I feel like we spoke about this very similarly with the launch of the Switch One because I mean there was no third party support for Wii and Wii U essentially,
No.
and so we were it was like the same thing of like oh we're hearing that these people these developers are gonna support the Switch. We've got the earliest we got like Skyrim and stuff coming, and it felt like very promising and like a very good thing initially, but it kind of seemed to kind of drop off a cliff of like these developers realizing that they either couldn't or didn't want to take the time to completely kind of make a port that ran well on Switch. Because I remember like one of the ones that was like exciting but then very disappointing was Doom 20 the Doom
Oh,
Switch
really?
port. I hear it was like
Yeah.
just awful. Like it was just like you
Oh
can't like
no.
it's just very bad. And like there was like the NBA 2K games that were just trash on Switch.
Yeah.
And I
I mean,
think I don't
yeah.
even think that it's I think some of it is that it's just not as powerful, but I think it's just the work involved. It's kind of like the same thing that we're seeing with the Xbox Series S of like trying to these devs trying to get their game to run on less powerful hardware. And yeah, again, I don't think it's that it can't be done, but I think it's once a certain gap has been reached and it takes a lot more work to do it, then I think it's just not feasible for a lot of devs to put that time in. And so we'll see. Like I would like to see as many third party stuff come to Switch as possible, but I think just speaking from like a wider industry perspective of like I think we really are at a point where like the big companies like there's like Sony and Xbox and EA, Ubisoft, they need to start looking at like what they can do in terms of trying to make smaller scoped games and maybe games and like some of it is like I think some of it is just shorter games that'll cut like budget down and I don't think it would be the craziest thing. I think a lot of us would be totally fine with shorter games, but I think the other thing is like I would love to see big developers do something like Pentiment that Obsidian did, just this random little like what very
Oh
much seems like
yeah.
an indie game that like an indie studio could have made, but it was just a small team within Obsidian that said we just want to make this game. Like I think we need more stuff like that to
Well,
kind of diversify and give more options of how we can make not this like hundreds of millions of dollars
I
game.
mean, just look at Astrobot.
Oh yeah, that's
Like it was a team that, originally was with PlayStation, got let go, made their own studio, and then got hired to make Astrobot, and it became like a game of the year video game out of like this little character that was only made for like demos of like the PSVR and the PlayStation 5. But then it was like something that it was totally out of the wheelhouse of modern day PlayStation, but at the same time it felt so right and it felt so good. I know like at least for me, like it was something that made me feel like, oh, like more people than Nintendo could do this stuff. It's just like the willingness to do it has to be there. And I think that can happen as long as, there's that fine balance between wanting to make those big AAA games and then doing smaller projects that can be done faster, but then also still have that same quality, just at a a lower budget. Now, if that's within like their realm of possibility or like their willingness to want to do that, that's another story.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. I guess just all the big players how they handle things. I think it's tough to know what it's like on the inside, but I think most of these publishers, I suppose, talk about largely wanting to allow their developers to make what they want to make and make what they're passionate about, and um, it's it'll be interesting to see if like there is more of a uh, push to get developers to make certain types of games, or like because like the live service thing sounds a little interesting because I think a lot of people, especially if you don't really like listen to gaming news and podcasts and stuff, I think it would be pretty easy to assume that Sony forced all of these developers to make all these live service games, and then especially with what we kind of heard from the Shuhei interview, uh, it very much sounds like their philosophy is to have developers pitch them games and to kind of, you know, have them, come up with the ideas of what they want to make, but that they might say something like, generally speaking, we would like to see some more live service games. And then I think the biggest L on Sony's part wasn't that they said that you have to make a live service game, but it's that they seem to have said we want live service games. Everyone came with a live service pitch, and they greenlit all of them. It's like
Yeah.
that was the mistake there of like we needed to kind of pick and choose here. It's like not, it's great that like let's just pretend like we like maybe they were all just 100% gung ho. All of these developers really passionate, wanted to make these games. I think it gets to the point where it's like it in a world where it was just single player games, there's a lot less reason to turn down any of these developers' ideas because it's like, yeah, like, go make the single player game that you're passionate about. But it's like, you can
Right.
only support so many live service games, and so at a certain point, it's like, it's
Yeah.
cool if you guys want to make these games, and these, I don't think anyone's really trying to say that any of these games are would have been just like bad. Like the people who actually played Concord seem to enjoy it. It's just like one of those unfortunate things of like the landscape and everything of just like there isn't the space to have all of these multiplayer sort of live service
And
offerings.
yeah, and then it's also just like the strategy of how you would deliver that service to the players. Because like off the top of my head, I can only think is like the only thing that I can think of that's Sony related to games as a service that kicked off really well was Helldivers 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and even then, Helldivers 2 isn't your average like games as a service game. Like, yeah, there is like the grind aspect to it, but what they've done with Helldivers 2 is out of the norm for that
Yeah.
genre of game, that can't be replicated, or at least replicated easily. And then we
Yeah.
saw that with Concord, where it was another game that came out like at a price. It wasn't free to play, but then it was expected to become this big games as a service game that couldn't capture the zeitgeist. It was, there were fans of it, but it just was too much money to produce than they were getting back right away, and the writing was on the wall. And I think with what happened to Concord, Sony is now in this reevaluation stage where it's like, okay, we have all of these games of service games that are, being tested, being developed. Which ones are actually gonna do something? And now that's why we're seeing this big exodus of these cancellations of all of these different properties, and some of them haven't even been announced yet.
Yeah,
So we don't know what they're gonna be.
it's it's crazy to think like well, it's probably the right call to be very wary, and especially after what happened with Concord, if you're Sony, it's hard to not feel as if they are like almost being too reactionary of like, oh man, we shouldn't have greenlit all these games. Let's just cancel all of them, right? Of like, I feel like there might have been some middle ground of like, all right, well, we did this, and maybe we shouldn't have done it, but at the end of the day, a lot of these devs have been working on these games for quite some time. Like, is there something that can be done here? Like, I don't just the way that the vibes are. It doesn't sound like they're in a place to want to try to salvage this stuff in some way. Because I know some people were talking about like, all right, maybe we shouldn't do a service God of War game from Bluepoint, but who like what did they work on? Is there a way to to shift that into some sort of single player experience? Like, can is there some salvageable work here, or are they just gonna scrap the whole thing and do something else? Because it very much seems like a reactionary thing of like, oh man, none of this is gonna hit. We need to just cut our losses, cancel all of it, and get back to what historically we know does well. We're gonna have Blue Point do another remake, and who knows what Ben Studio would go and work on. Um,
Yeah.
and it's yeah, it's just it's interesting to see that sort of like massive pullback because like yeah again like Concord I don't it seems crazy to me that you technically got that game to the finish line. We're not going to give it more than two
And
weeks.
and that's and I think that's what the wild thing about Concord was, is that it seemed like Sony had a lot riding on Concord doing well, because you had all of this, advertisement for, you had like these state of plays for Concord. You had an episode of Secret Level
That yeah, that's crazy.
solely for Concord, for a game that doesn't exist anymore. Um, so it just, like, I'm not going to begin to try to understand what it's like to be like one of those top executives that make the decisions to, fund or stop development on a game. Um, I am curious as to what this is going to do for Sony's release, because off the top of my head, at least the projects that we know, there's Wolverine from Insomniac,
Hmm.
Naughty Dog's new game Intergalactic
Yep.
is a game.
Yeah, that
I
one's like so up in the air in terms of how far along that is. I feel like I know
Yeah.
Neil said that they were had been working on it for some time now, but like some people are like expecting that we might get that in like uh as early as next year, and then I think a lot more people are like, oh, that's
Oh no.
2028, 2029, that's PS6. And I'm like, I'm somewhere in between of like maybe 2027, but I frankly have like really no idea because it's like I don't how many people were working on the Last of Us factions, whatever that was going to be,
Yeah,
and how
it's
badly did
true.
that shake things up? Because I feel like I honestly feel like it's quite some ways away. Because if I had to guess, I would think that while they may have technically been working on it for years, I would imagine that it was a lot of pre-production and concept work because I imagine that they had their team
Hmm.
working on the multiplayer thing, and then they had the other team making the remakes and remasters. They had Last of Us Part 1 remake and then The Last of Us Part 2 remaster. Those were
Yeah,
in-house. I'm pretty sure. I don't know about the remaster. I know the remake was.
I believe so.
And so
They're
it's
in
like
house.
that's kind of a lot of stuff that they were already working on, and I imagine that it's hard for me to imagine that Intergalactic is near.
No, I think it'll be kind of like how The Last of Us was. Well, it'll be like the end cap to like the current console cycle. Like we'll have like the last year or two, Intergalactic will be like that last big, like, this is this is what all the years of like the PS5, has culminated to, like this experience,
Yeah.
kind of like how The Last of Us was. It does make me wonder though that the canceled God of War multiplayer game was being made by Bluepoint and not Sony Santa Monica, so it makes me wonder what they're doing.
It's from again, I don't think we really know, but from what I think they are working on an unannounced like Cory Barlog directed non God of War game. It's
Interesting.
from
Okay.
is what I believe, because I want to say like around the time that they finished up the first one, they I can't remember if they actually had Cory Barlog on like a kind of funny one of their shows, but either way, I think they had spoken about how he didn't want to direct Ragnarok. He wanted to take a step back from that, and that he had an idea that he was gestating on, and that
And
they had also spoken at that time that, at least for now, like not that God of War is over, but for this specific arc, that it's just going to be
yeah,
the two games. It's not going to be a
right.
trilogy, and so it sounds like that they're going to be working on something else, which is. I mean, I'm pretty sure they've only worked on God of War for the entirety of their studio lifetime. Um, and so that'll be interesting. But also, I feel like with that, with just simply it not being God of War, I feel like they might take some time with it. And so that's another one that I would expect to see or hear about probably till we're talking about PS6. But even that kind of feels weird to me. Of like, I wouldn't be surprised if the PS6 is a little further out than people think. But I don't know. It's hard to guess that stuff because obviously we had the pandemic and that throws things off, and then while
Yeah.
I think we could be fine not seeing one for a while, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because it sounds like Xbox wants to wash their hands of the series generation and get to the next thing, because they just like, yeah, no, we don't. We want to get to the next. They've already been hyping it up about like this is going to be the most powerful console ever, which is like, okay, but this is like, it's very much an Apple thing of like, it's the thinnest iPhone ever. It's like, yeah, but so was your last one. Like, technically, the Series X is the most powerful console ever, and well,
It
I
was
guess
made
not
with a similar
now
material
with the Pro. I
that
forget
made
about the
it
PS5 Pro, but
2.6 inches lighter
yeah, it's like,
or something like that. No, I understand, especially now that we're reaching this stage where modern day, like at least gaming, has become so iterative. Like it's not so much like, yeah, the Series X is touted as the most powerful console, which, by stats, yeah. I mean, I don't know compared to the PS5 Pro because I haven't really looked into, that. I kind of shut my brain off of that because I'm perfectly fine with my normal PS5. That's completely fine. But like we're getting to a point where are these upgrades going to be as big as they used to be, like comparatively to like how like the PS3 and the Xbox One was back then. Um, I don't know. I could see the next generation of consoles being more of a thing maybe in like 3 years or so. Because I feel like we just got the PS5 Pro, so they kind of have to run with that a little bit at least, or at least kind of give it a purpose for existing, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, we haven't really seen. Well, I don't know. I don't know if that's totally true, but yeah, we haven't really seen like a new hit title that's like being marketed as you're gonna want a pro for this. And I was gonna say like we don't have any examples of a game looking a lot better, but I do hear that the Final Fantasy games see quite an improvement on the pro, just because I heard a lot of complaints from like Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth and of 16 being kind of muddy on the regular PS5. And I think I don't know if they've come out, but we've at least seen already like how those games run on PC and stuff, and like it's like you see similar benefits on the Pro. I just saw like some clips and stuff in passing from like Digital Foundry, and that those seem to be like some of the examples of a games that seem to get a big benefit, but everything else, I don't think there's much
Right.
else that's really all that exciting. And like it's not, they didn't, the console didn't come out with a new game, and their next big first party game will, I guess, will be Ghost of Yotei, right? For in terms of like since the pros come
Oh, that's
out.
right. I forgot about Ghost of Yotei for a second. So we three PlayStation games
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we
at least
know
that
of.
are like like that are like announced. And then there's,
Hmm.
I guess, some things that we could suspect of. Like I would imagine we get Horizon 3 before or around the time of a PS6.
I
Like
mean,
that could be just like another one, kind of like
probably.
last or not Last of Us, but like the Intergalactic of kind of being coming in at the end there, and then I don't know. I'm very interested to see what we're looking at in terms of uh Insomniac's output because I mean I don't think we have any reason to believe that Wolverine isn't the next game, but I've heard people talking about like I don't know why people, I guess it's just because of the leaks people latch on, like people still think that like we're getting a Venom game like imminently, like not just that we might get one
Oh,
eventually, and I'm like I get that that was in like the leaks basically, that they had a concept for a Venom game, and then if spoilers for Spider-Man 2, you 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 play as Venom, and like
yeah,
people are like, uh, oh, they made a whole move set for this character for this like one sequence. Like, yeah, you'd think they'd want to do something more with that. And I'm like, I'm not gonna discount the fact that maybe they had a concept, or maybe that they will still eventually make one, but I don't think that there's any reality in which it comes out before Wolverine. But I guess that's just because one of them is announced and one of them's not. So like
yeah.
even if they did, even if that was the plan, it seems like plans have changed because a lot of people are still. I think they got to give up hope. There's some people that
Well,
are still hoping for Spider-Man 2
I
DLC, and I'm like, no, that's over.
because we have to remember they were working on that Spider-Man,
The Spider
open
Verse
world
game,
multiplayer, the
yeah,
Spider-Verse game that got canceled. So if they had one team working on that and one team working on Wolverine, if they wanted to start making like a Venom game, that would have already been in production for like a year
yeah,
at this point. So like we would not be seeing that anytime soon if that was the case.
yeah. I think the greatest hope could have been like maybe that there could have been a world in which Spider-Man 2 DLC was Venom DLC, but like I think we're kind of beyond that, and but I don't know, it's like I guess we haven't really heard anything official since Wolverine in terms of what they're working on, and it's like because
Hmm.
while we don't really know what will come of the Spider-Man stuff because we just heard a lot of concepts and things that seemingly have been canceled or have definitely been canceled, but it's I think we're in a new era of Insomniac now, just in terms of regardless of anything else they were making, they were always also working on a Ratchet and Clank game for like
Yeah.
ever, like for so long now. And I get the feeling that they're not right now. I get the feeling that it's Wolverine and then the other team working on whatever the next Spider-Man thing is. And maybe I don't know how big they are. I don't know. I doubt that they would have the capability to be working on a Spider-Man thing and a Wolverine thing and a Ratchet and Clank thing. And I also have my doubts that they would have Spider-Man on the back burner right now and be working on Wolverine and Ratchet and Clank. Like, not to say that like Ratchet and Clank's done or like they'll never make one or that we don't want another one. I feel like it right now it might be the biggest gap for like a Ratchet and Clank game. Like I don't know if we see another Ratchet and Clank game for some time, but it's also kind of hard to know what they're gonna do. A lot of people, I won't go into exactly what happens, but based on the ending of Spider-Man 2, a lot of people don't necessarily either want or think that they will just go into Spider-Man 3. A lot of people are like maybe they will do like another Miles Morales kind of smaller game, and like maybe it could be
And that'll
a
be
Miles
fine.
Morales 2, um, or something along those lines. And I guess to that point, we don't actually know how big Wolverine is going to be. We were all assuming that it's a fully featured $70 title and all these things, but Spider-Man 2 seemed to be one of the, I guess just because of the leaks of just like knowing how much that game cost, it's like that seems to be like one of the big warning signs of like, oh man, this game, sold about as much as you could ever hope for it to sell, and it's still, we're not really making the profit because it was just such an expensive game to make. And so like I wonder if they are starting to consider scaling down, of like maybe Wolverine is a bit of a smaller thing. I don't know. I mean, that it also, that I bet that the concept and development might probably, for Wolverine specifically, probably too far along. I bet Wolverine is probably just going to be what it was always going to be, from when we had it announced. But I don't know. It's tough to say, and so yeah, I don't really know. Like I definitely, that for sure. I think if nothing else, we're gonna get Wolverine. I think within the next couple years, unless something truly dramatic
I think
happens.
I think we get a release date by Summer Game Fest.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Like that sounds about right. I'm kind of given up by this point, but I was holding out hope that we might actually get Wolverine this year, and I still think there's like a 2% chance, but like I don't feel it. But the one thing that's I always think is interesting is that since Insomniac's beginnings as a studio, they've never gone more than 2 years without releasing a game, like ever, like not
Oh,
once, not a
interesting.
single time. And this would
Oh,
be, they would have to have Wolverine come out this year to keep that, which is again like it's just a fun thing to like, if the game needs more time, the game needs more time. Definitely take that time, but that would be interesting if they could somehow manage to maintain that and be like, all right, November, Wolverine's coming out, let's go. I could see it happening, just like that. It, less so now, but it's just like they, more so than most devs, they really pump games out at Insomniac.
yeah. It's gonna be interesting. I'm curious to see when, like, whenever the next state of play is gonna be, and see what they have in store for us this year,
Yeah, it's
or
gonna
just like in
be.
general in the future.
I wonder if they'll have, because like I don't know. I bet they're kind of panicking in terms of just like, all right, well, we're gonna cancel these games. These devs aren't gonna have anything ready for a while. Right, as of what we know now, Ghost of Yotei is seemingly the only first party game that we'll get this year. And I'm sure we're going to get more announcements and more information, but I could see a world in which that remains to be the only first party game that we get this year. At least like truly, it's one of their own studios and something. We don't know if we have any more surprises, like a random Horizon Lego game. Or something like that, and but I'm interested if they're gonna try to do more partnerships, because like they are, Final Fantasy, like Square is already talking about not wanting to do the exclusive partnerships anymore for Final Fantasy because
Mhm.
that isn't doing well for them. But I wonder if they're like, are they locked in for the next Final Fantasy 7? Like, is that going to be exclusive just because they made the deal however long ago? Like, I think that could still be exclusive. But I don't, that that's not going to be this year, maybe
Right.
next year. And then it's like, are they going to have some more random ones like whatever, like Rise of the Ronin, or just like these random games that they're just kind of partnering and getting in there? And because I feel like they're gonna want to try to have something else besides just Goes of Yote, but they might just not be able to make it happen. I'm not sure. I imagine that something like those exclusive deals can be worked or like worked out like later down, like I don't think it's necessary that they make those deals like at the inception of a game. Like it could be a game that's like ready to come out and then they swoop in and be like, hey guys, you heard you have a game coming out, you want to make it exclusive to the PlayStation?
Do you all want a publisher?
Yeah.
Here you go.
And
Yeah,
so
it's gonna be a very interesting situation, especially this year with, it seemed like the tables flipped the other way, where it, like, at least right now, just based off of the lack of information we had, like Sony is on the back burner, while Xbox seems like they are finally
oh,
catching their stride.
the
And
dominoes, they're
yeah,
finally
the
starting to fall.
dominoes, the
Which
dominoes are falling
the funny part about
ever
that
so
is
slowly.
like, because it very much seems to be, Xbox seems primed for a great year, but then we're also, it seems to be the year where there will be more Xbox games than ever coming to PlayStation.
Also true.
uh,
So Xbox is going to supplement some of Sony's.
yeah, it's like I'll be interested to see if there's a big interest for Indiana Jones on Xbox. Well, it's not surprising. I forgot that, like, I don't know, for some reason it was surprising to me because I just wasn't thinking about it that Doom was just gonna be on PlayStation. I guess that's just from their prior commitment of when they bought Bethesda, they said like any existing franchises they were going to try to keep multi-platform. So like we didn't get
Hmm.
Starfield because it's a new franchise, but Doom, like the other two Dooms, were on PlayStation, so they want to maintain that.
Or even Ninja Gaiden.
Oh yeah,
Uh, 2 Black and 4 are going to be on PS5 as well.
but those are do they own those devs?
Uh, I don't think they own those devs, but I think just like Ninja Gaiden and like Koei Tecmo have like a relationship with, at least in the past, with Xbox as far as Ninja
Okay,
Gaiden goes.
yeah, I'm
But
very unfamiliar.
so, like, on their dev direct this past week, like just like the fact that they had like the PS5 like on the list of like where they're releasing, and it seems like it's going to be day and date. It's not going to be like later on, at least for those games, as far as I know.
Okay,
So it's a very interesting time. We're in this weird new space of, you know, Xbox more and more being a third party kind of deal, where and then also like PlayStation is going through their own kind of growing pains as far as how to navigate the ever changing like live service world, or just trying to handle it. And then, like I said before, Nintendo's just on their island. They're just sitting right there
yeah, it's
preparing themselves.
I guess to just like touch on our earlier conversation, it might be a very daunting, scary time to get into game dev. It's a great time to be a gamer. Like there's
Oh,
so much, and like this, we might not have like the most offerings from PlayStation specifically in terms of like their first party studios, but just in general, we've got all these Xbox games coming out. We've got Xbox games coming to PlayStation and a new Nintendo console. And then who knows? Maybe all the indie games that people have been saying are going to come out for the last 3 years are actually going to come out this year. Like, I don't know. Like, it's going to be a wild time, and like it'll. Like, I'm especially interested to see like how friendly Xbox is with Nintendo. Like how many of they games they put on. Like, is the Master Chief Collection rumor like true for them putting it on Switch 2 and other things like that? Like,
is the Call of Duty rumor true? That's
yeah,
also a
like
big
that
question.
one, I'll be fascinated by that. Of just like, yeah, I guess
If it
I
runs
want to know,
decently,
all the like DLSS kind of like all the stats. I want Digital Foundry to tell me what the Switch can really do after Nintendo tells us, like the stats and all that. Um, but yeah, I think that could be huge. Of like, especially like Halo and Call of Duty specifically, like while the hardcore people I don't think are necessarily gonna like jump to Switch being their first place they want to play. Um, I think that there's an element of like if the Switch 2 can catch on in a similar way that the first Switch did, because like that's the one thing of like Nintendo doesn't really have much in the way of like split screen kind of like local multiplayer offerings, or well, maybe local multiplayer is a bit too far. It's a split screen specifically of like, yeah, they've got like Mario Party and Smash and things like that. But in terms of like, I just imagine like, wouldn't it be so cool to like go to like a friend's house or like a bar or whatever and be playing Call of Duty on your Switches? Like
oh man.
that would be so much fun, and that would kind of like it'd be so much better than like yeah trying to share the one screen or whatever.
I I kind of, in my heart, hope this actually happens now, because I want the conversation to be, what's more preferable to play Call of Duty, mouse and keyboard, controller, or Joy-Con mouse and
Yeah,
controls?
that'll be that'll be interesting. Well, yeah, I am skeptical in terms of how the Joy-Con will feel as a mouse. If that is the thing,
Hmm.
which I don't know, it's hard to feel like it's not. Like it very much, I don't know if we had actual rumors of this before the reveal. But obviously, it very much looks like a mouse motion that the Joy Cons are doing.
Like,
Um, but I could very
like the
much
only
see.
rumor, oh sorry,
No, go for it.
the, but the only rumor I saw I saw was like the because where the new Joy-Cons connect, like people pointed out that there's like an extra sensor
Oh.
like above I guess what would you call like the chip that like goes into like the sides of the Switch to like read the Joy-Cons, but like there's like this little sensor that looks very much like the short range sensor on a mouse.
Okay.
And so and then have tying that with the little section of the reveal trailer where like they're on that little like extra attachment and like gliding on like the table or whatever they're on.
Oh yeah. So
Kind
maybe
of
it's
puts
just
it,
like kind of like a thing that adds like little um pads or something to like make it slide across like a mouse would. Because
yeah,
obviously
just
like
kind of
the
evens it out.
because yeah, I don't think it's without the attachment. I don't think it would be flat like that.
Oh no.
Because it
Not with
seems
those big buttons.
those it seems like the um I don't know, like, cause like I know Andy was talking about like, cause there's like the colored element that kind of sticks out from the Joy-Con that like looks like what it would have been for the Switch One of like that attachment, but it looks like it's just like built into the Joy-Con because it looks like that colored element remained when the controller went into the console. But then yeah, I guess maybe the like thing that was just better bumpers before, like that weird attachment that everyone just kind of like threw in a closet or whatever for their Switch ones. Like that probably is going to be like a mouch attachment now. But and maybe that'll feel good. I'm skeptical about the Joy-Con itself, but if that is the path, I can only imagine that they're going to have third party. Well, I would hope that you don't have to get like a Switch specific mouse, and I could just use my mouse I already use. But I'm more interested in like the Tim's Geddes way of like I want it to be a thing of like you use the joystick in the one hand, but a mouse in the other hand. I think that's the way because
Hmm.
that's my biggest complaint about mouse and
I
keyboard gaming is I don't like the keyboard part of it.
yeah. I could imagine like the third party attachments of like sliding in your Joy-Con into something to make it look like a mouse.
Oh. It's like the it's
Like
like the wheel for the Mario Kart. You just put it's like a
yes.
just put the Joy-Con in a mouse thing.
A
Nintendo
hundred
Labo
percent.
can bring back cardboard mouse thing. But yeah, it's that'll be interesting. The thing I'm kind of fascinated about is like I guess you could consider that to be the new gimmick or the new feature because it's like while just mouse capability at all isn't necessarily you know, a gimmick or some sort of weird feature in the style that it would be implemented here. It is kind of like a weird thing and neat thing, especially for like a handheld, which I guess the Steam Deck solution is to just have touchpads and it's not necessarily meant to be like you play that way. Like it's not like oh you're like mouse
Right.
gaming, it's all accurate, but they have those instead. And so yeah, I wonder, but I'm curious like if they're how hard they'll go with it. Like if like I do think that if they're trying to push that there will be some weird game that they make that they want you to use the mouse controls for.
I mean, a lot of people were pointing out like what it would be like if Prime 4 had mouse controls.
Yeah, that would that'd be interesting. I think yeah, because I guess I definitely think that there's a use case there, and especially when you're talking about like some sort of first person shooter, or especially if Call of Duty does make its way there, I think there's going to be plenty of people who are interested in that. I guess outside of a Call of Duty though, I do wonder how much of an interest there is because, um, but I don't know. I guess that's for me just coming from someone who's always been a console gamer. Even now that I have a
Mhm.
PC, I don't find myself using mouse and keyboard much, and if I were to do it, um, it would be yeah more so of like just in a like strictly competitive setting. Like if I'm playing like Marvel Rivals or something, like if I'm playing something single player, I don't feel the need to be like to like really like min max and be like put myself in the best position to succeed because I'm just kind of like hanging out playing a game. So like I for it's like something like Metroid Prime, like I wonder like how many
Yeah.
people would want to uh get in there and have that super accurate aiming or how many people are just kind of chilling out with it. But I think it probably just
That's
depends a
fair.
lot on what kind of a gamer you are, and I'm sure like a lot of people just like I think Andy is someone who it doesn't matter if it's a first person shooter, he wants to be on mouse and keyboard. Um,
Mhm.
and I think another element too, especially if they, I don't know if they would do like some sort of keyboard thing or allow you to connect a keyboard, because the thing that I find more likely to want to use a mouse and keyboard is not for better aiming with a mouse, but for like any game that is menu based or inventory based, something like Civilization or
Oh
Baldur's
yeah.
Gate, where it's like there's all these things you're clicking on, and all these skills and stuff, and it sometimes it's just easier to manage that stuff on like a mouse and
Well,
keyboard.
I think Tim brought this up this week on like a Games Daily or something. But like just also just like the indie games that are on Steam that would have a hard time transitioning into like a console-based system
Mm,
if the Switch 2 had mouse capabilities, they could just bring it over to the
yeah,
Switch 2.
I'd be, and like yeah, I think it would. I think more people would at least want to try it out if it was just as simple as press this button, or I don't know how you like would initiate the mouse, or maybe you just put it on, you just start using it as a mouse and it just works without you having to even do anything. But like I think more people would be inclined to at least check it out compared to like, yeah, you can technically plug in a mouse and keyboard to your PlayStation, but like it's weird and it's kind of funky and sometimes it doesn't work right, and it's like especially like if you don't have a wireless setup, then like your
Mm,
PlayStation is probably plugged into a TV that's like too far away from your couch, and it's like I think it's more of a hassle than most people care to bother with. But if you were just say you
mhm,
brought your Switch to a coffee shop and you were just like, oh yeah, you're like sitting at a table and like, oh yeah, they talked about that this has like a mouse thing, and you just started kind of like messing around with it. I could see it catching on and being a an alternative way to play, or maybe just yeah, whole new sort of like games that exclusively utilize that. I think that could be really fun, and like who knows, like maybe that is more of a thing that they care about and want to push more, and is the sort of like new thing that the Switch is bringing to the table, other than just being more like powerful.
yeah. There's a big realm of possibilities that could happen, and it's just unfortunate we have to wait until April, but I'm excited to see when that direct comes, like what Nintendo has in store for us for the Switch 2.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Um I am thinking that I don't know why, like this isn't based on like information or like logic. I feel it in my heart. I think the console's gonna be $450. I don't. I I can't. I don't know. I
I
guess I
mean,
could see it being
it's
more
very
expensive than
possible.
that. Like I somehow.
That has to be the maximum.
Yeah. Well, for some reason, I actually think that 500 is like the absolute maximum. I don't, but I don't feel that. But for some reason, both 400 and 500 seem wrong to me, and somehow I think it'd be in the middle. But it also feels weird. I feel like Nintendo likes. I feel like they like that nice ring of like the $50 would almost just like that would annoy them more, and they'd rather lose the $50 and make it 400. I definitely think it's very likely to be 400, but I could see it being 450. It's hard for me to see it being much more than that, but I could also see like who like maybe it's like because like I don't know, I could see in I the actual answer I think is that it's going to be somewhere in between where like we're making a lot of assumptions that it's just going to be like just like the Switch One. Like I could see a world in which it's $400, but it doesn't come with a dock. You have to buy the dock separately, or you have to do this
Oh
thing.
no.
Like that would suck. That would be awful. And I think that's
Ugh.
less likely to happen with Nintendo than it than we saw with Sony, where like the disc drive didn't come with the PS5 Pro, and the stand and none of it came with it, and it was still the $700. Um, so I don't, but like it could be something where it's like, oh yeah, no dock, $400, and then there's this $500 bundle that comes with the dock and Mario Kart or something like that,
Oh no.
or like comes with a Pro
I
controller,
It's like I really hope that isn't the case, but you never know.
or like
But now I just like imagine like a dockless bundle.
is there a
It's like
world
you can get
in which the Switch One dock works for the Switch Two,
I don't think
and it
so.
just like
I
sticks
think
out
it's too
extra? It
I
doesn't look
think
because that would be interesting. I
Well,
doubt it, but
I think because the Switch 2 is a little bit bigger, so I don't know if that
oh yeah, do we
affects
know
affects
how
the width of
thick
it
is it? Yeah,
at
I don't know
all.
how thick it is. Um,
But
that would be kind of
I
cool
just think
though.
like based off of what the because that's the other question. What upgrades are gonna be on the dock? We don't know.
Yeah, like
Is it just
gonna
gonna
push
be
it to
like the
4K or
dock
something?
for like the OLED where it's just, a little bit improved, but like nothing really is like in the dock, or is the dock gonna be doing something that enhances dock mode? Because I know that was the big problem with the Switch was like sometimes being in dock mode, the games didn't look as good as if you're playing on handheld. So
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Of
I don't
like,
know.
because I know in because yeah, that could be another thing too. Of like, if the dock is doing something, that could like, and it's like maybe like allowing the console to like overclock, or it has all these ports, or maybe like handheld the Switch is 1080, but docked it can go up to 4K. Maybe that alone would make them make the dock separate, because maybe the dock is going to be like more expensive, and maybe they're like, oh, a lot of people don't need this, want this. Or maybe I could even see two SKUs of docks. Like maybe there is like a better, like there's like a the super dock thing that you doesn't come with it,
Super
but
dock.
there's just like a basic, just it'll work to put
Gonna
on your
have a
TV.
dock that has built-in Alarmo in
Or like, yeah, I don't know,
it.
it'll be interesting. But yeah, I
Well, I
wouldn't be
guess
surprised
also,
of seeing like a to see it
mhm,
release in a sort of different way than just like it's going to be exactly like Switch 1. It's going to come with a dock. It's just going to be this. I think there's going to be some element of like either something that they're doing
like
with the dock, or just something that is like different from how they released the Switch 1.
like have a SKU that's more targeted towards the people that bought the Switch Lite, which is like it's very bare bones. You get the handheld, but like you said, everything else would be extra if you wanted it. Um, I mean that's it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's like it's you know
Did the Switch, does it come with the like controller handle thing to like mount the Joy-Cons on? If you're
yeah.
okay, I couldn't remember if it like comes with that. Yeah, I'm interested to see. Like I bet that'll probably be the same. They'll probably include one of those, and then your little mouse attachment thingies.
Like grip, yeah.
um, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm most interested in like the literal launch of it than anything. Of like, is there gonna be like a weird one Switch two or 1-2 Switch game, or some
Oh,
sort of Wii Sports equivalent, or I don't or some sort of new
so
version of that.
I I talked about this on uh another podcast, but
You want to shout it out? Want to
my
plug it?
well, I run a podcast called Unite We Nerd. We stream live every Tuesday on Twitch, pretty much talking about video games and stuff like that. But our most recent episode, we talked about the possible launch ideas for the Switch 2, and we got onto that topic of like what would be the like gimmick game that like shows you the capabilities. And I was thinking, you know, 1-2 Switch was a game. Let's just be honest. It was there. Um, but I feel like if they wanted to really come out with a bang, if they wanted like that one game that showed the capabilities of the Switch 2, like what it could do, I think it would be very cool if they made a Mario Maker 3 and had the full capabilities of like what the Switch 2 can do. Like not only could it process like what if Mario Maker 3 you're able to get into more of like the 3D world aspect, you know, like having it kind of process more of like the 3D realm, and like when you're making levels like you can use the mouse tracking to like fine detail like the courses that you make and stuff like that. I don't know. I think it'd be a good idea. Is it going to happen? Probably not, but
We could,
it'd be real cool.
yeah, we could see. Did you, I don't know if you were able to watch Tim's Switch 2 predictions, but he brought up something. I mean, he that's essentially what he brought up, but his sort of framing of it was that it would be
Okay.
Mario Maker 3, but that it would essentially also be Mario Paint 2, that it would have like Mario Paint stuff in
Oh,
there, and that it
okay.
would be because he was trying to propose a game that would be kid friendly, because I think he was also proposing that Metroid 4 would launch with the Switch as well, and that they would want some other sort of like more kid friendly game, and that
Right.
Blessing said like, oh well, Mario Maker is kind of like technical and kind of like complicated, and like, is that a kid game? And he's like, oh well, if you put all these other sort of like Mario Paint element things in there where you could use the mouse and you could paint, and I guess you could like do like
Yeah.
simple music stuff and animation stuff. And I never played, or I'm not familiar with Mario Paint, but doing that in addition to the Mario Maker stuff to kind of differentiate it and make it feel like a Mario Maker 3. And then the end, and like you're saying, just like all of just the trying to construct a level and doing all that, I'm sure would be pretty nice to have like the mouse functionality.
Yeah. I mean, that would all be really cool. It's just if, Nintendo wants to do that. So it's so hard because everything is all speculative and just like we're like kind of like fantasy booking like our own, Switch 2 launch, which, could be very close to the truth or it could be
It's probably going to be
completely
like something no
polar
one could have
opposites.
guessed. It's going to be like, oh, hey guys, sorry, we don't have Netflix and Disney Plus on the Switch right now, but you can get Photoshop and use your mouse, and you can get like just like some random
Oh my
computer application.
Nintendo Nintendo Photoshop mode.
Yeah, it's like just like some weird
some
Photoshop
some
thing,
weird like
and
Nintendo version of Adobe
it's gonna
After Effects.
it's gonna come with I don't know what it was actually called, but they had like the Game Boy like printer, and you could like print
Yeah.
stuff out. Yeah, it just
Yeah.
comes with like a thing that you can print out and stuff. Yeah, who I guess that's I'm like I'm hoping for something that no one could have guessed. I want, like, as
Same.
much as we like to harp on them for the weird Nintendo decisions, I kind of I don't want to completely lose that, and that was kind of like what I felt like with the name Switch 2, of like, I'm like, oh man, are we seeing a new era for Nintendo? Are they gonna start making less weird decisions? Because it's like they've had plenty of consoles that were very iterative, but they've never actually called one just the two, and I'm like,
Right.
hmm, are they going to be playing it safer this time around? Like, I can't imagine that they're going to be completely uh I guess predictable with a lot of their decisions. I'm still I don't I think one of the single weirdest decisions that they've ever made is the decision to release that Super Mario collection. Like it was like, what was it,
Oh,
64 Galaxy and
like
Sunshine?
the 3D. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they like removed it from sale after like however long it was, 3 months or something.
Yeah.
You can only get it physically now, and it's like, on the one hand, it's like, I guess for any super fans, it's like you could consider it like not as much of a loss, because they didn't do anything to those games. Those weren't like remasters or anything. They were just like the most basic of
No, they weren't.
ports. And like a lot of people have done a lot, allegedly have done a lot more fun things with those games on PC. And so even just like, I'm like, are they it like, is that why they? I don't know. I don't. I keep trying to like justify why they would do that. I don't think there
Try
is
to
any sort of way, because like I'm like, are they gonna like fully remake Mario 64, and that's why they took it away? But I'm like, why not have it be on sale for the whole time, or why does that have to conflict with the new
who
thing?
who knows, man. It's literally honestly just weird Nintendo decisions that we can never predict, and till the end of time, Nintendo will never have a track record that can be predicted like 100%. There's always going to be some like left turn that they go down towards that like we would never expect. Because all I could think of is that the Switch 2 is going to have two USB ports. You cannot tell me Nintendo is going to not be thinking of some weird like device to attach
To
it to the
plug
Switch
into the
to.
that you can have your little light, your little Game Boy light or something. I don't know. Maybe like
Who
a
knows?
oh my god, like okay. Well, now I could see it because it doesn't sound like a good idea. I could see them doing. Imagine like some weird Nintendo branded like webcam, and you could be at a coffee shop and you could live stream like you could stream to Twitch with webcam directly from the Switch. It's all there.
Boy,
You plug the webcam in, you just go
I mean,
live.
that's what they wanted to do with the Wii U, but it just never got off the ground. Like in the Wii U reveal, they showed like live face cam.
Really?
Yeah, but it never really caught on. Like it wasn't. It was never really used that much. Um, but all I could say is through the time that we've had with the Switch and the stuff that made like Labo, they came out with Wii Fit, or not Wii Fit, but the
Ring Fit.
Ring Fit. Thank you. And then of course, how can we not forget this beauty
Oh my
right
god.
here? Re- Remember this game?
Kind
The
of?
Toy to Life. Um, I forget. It was like Star
Star
something.
Link?
Star.
Maybe?
I think it's
No, that's the internet
that's
thing.
the
That's
Ewok
like the
thing.
yeah, no, that's not what that is.
But like this kind of stuff. Like this is what we got with the Switch. So I
Oh yeah,
can only
some people
imagine
'cause that
what we
reminds me of
could get.
amiibos that I keep forgetting those exist. Some people were noticing that the it seems that the Switch 2 doesn't have an amiibo scanner thing. I forget
Like
like the little like
the little like
I forget what
NFC
tech
chip
yeah, like
reader.
that it doesn't have that.
I'm not surprised because when was the last time they came out with an amiibo?
I don't know. Probably the
I can't
Sora
remember.
amiibo for Smash. Probably. I think they made it. Well, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure every Smash character has an amiibo, but that's kind of my extent of amiibo knowledge. And I think
Yeah.
most amiibos are just the figurine. Like I think
Because
the percentages,
think the
the
last
percentage of amiibos that actually have like an extra digital feature. Because I don't think they all necessarily do. Even though I think the Smash
I think the
ones
last ones.
unlock the character if you haven't unlocked the character. Maybe no, because they're like DLC characters. They probably wouldn't do that. Maybe for
No.
like the other people, like if you hadn't unlocked it in game. But I don't know. The only ones I
Like the
know are like the Breath of the Wild ones.
Yeah, like they came out with ones for Tears of the Kingdom, and all they do is that it drops like a chest that has like items in it, and like you get the random chance of getting like a special item where like, oh, if you did use the the link from the Link's Awakening remake, you might get a, Link's Awakening like outfit set, or you
You
might get like a
might get one.
special.
You're not even you
It's
guaranteed.
not guaranteed. No,
What
not guaranteed.
is it like exclude? Like is it like a an item that you couldn't otherwise find in the game? Like if you did
Right?
get the
No.
item. No. Okay, I think the Breath of the Wild ones were like exclusive. Like you could only get these items via the amiibo. Like they had some
Well,
exclusive items.
like I think maybe there are some that are exclusive, but all I know is that at least for Tears of the Kingdom, if you had the Wolf Link amiibo, it doesn't summon Wolf Link like it did in Breath of the Wild. It just drops like meat.
Okay.
That's it.
I wonder if
But
they yeah, I
yeah,
guess they're probably moving away from amiibo specifically, which is fine. But
they've served their purpose.
I just say yeah, I
You
wonder if
know,
like there is a like the next amiibo or like there's some sort of weird thing or I almost wouldn't be surprised if like I do expect these kind of weird things at some point, but I wouldn't be surprised if they play it pretty low key for the launch and maybe introduce some sort of like new peripherals or attachments or other things later on. But who knows? I think I'm kind of even though you can never really predict what Nintendo is gonna do. I feel like this is like a time where like we like especially can. It's like oh like what is the new Mario Kart gonna be? Because like Mario Kart 8 is already like the epitome of Mario Kart. Like, what more could they do with it? And like, yeah, they could make it open world. They could have all the characters. There's stuff that they could do, but it's hard to predict what they would do there. Like
Yeah,
Smash Brothers for
we had a
me. Yeah.
generation. Oh yeah, like well, we had a generation of like this is like the pinnacle of you know Nintendo games. Like this is the farthest we've ever like pushed our franchises to. And it's like, okay, so now what do we do? Like
Hmm.
you can't make a Smash Ultimate too, because like what more could you add on to Smash Ultimate? And like vice versa, like you're talking about Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, or like I can't even imagine what the next like full like Zelda game is gonna be like.
I
You know,
I wouldn't be surprised if they double down on you're playing as Zelda, but it's like Breath of the Wild level game, but you're Zelda now.
oh
But I don't know, cause like I that's what I think again I'm not even that like deep into like the Zelda fandom. I'm very not knowledgeable about that, but I know I feel like a lot of fans probably thought or like felt sooner or later there's got to be a game where we play as Zelda, and I personally
right,
am surprised that they chose for that first game to be something like Echoes of Wisdom. But it's cool. I think it's neat,
yeah.
and people seem to vibe with that game. And but yeah, I wonder if that's like how they try to keep it fresh and move in that direction, or maybe we get something we've never seen before. Maybe it's not a Breath of the Wild or a insert previous Zelda game here. Maybe they try
Hmm.
to create a completely new style. Um,
Yeah,
but
very true.
yeah, it's they the interesting thing is they don't have as many games to lean on in terms of just re-releasing Wii U games, or even Switch games, since they'll
No,
just be backwards compatible. I guess we still have questions there in terms of like, is the Switch 2 gonna natively enhance games, or do they need to be remastered to take advantage of the Switch? Because if they need to be remastered, they are at least going to do some of that. They're probably they're probably if that's like the standard, like how they're going to go about it. I'm sure we're going to get a Breath of the Wild and Tears and like Mario Odyssey remasters and stuff. Who knows how far they'd go with it. For Smash Brothers, I could see them going back to like square one and be like, all right, Ultimate exists. You
I
can
feel like
go
you.
play it, and then we're gonna go back to like a small roster of characters and maybe change like the base of the game.
I
And
feel
like,
like you have to, and especially if we don't know if Sakurai is coming back or not. Like, cause Sakurai has said that this could be his last Smash game, like 3 Smash games in a row, and it's always been a lie. So it really just depends on you know where they want to take it, because like Smash Ultimate is you can't get any better than that without having a full sale change of some
mm-hmm.
kind. I don't know. It's just gonna. I think once the Switch 2 is finally here, I think it's going to be a very interesting, time for us to like see what Nintendo has up their sleeve as far as where they want to take their franchises, or like what new things can they deliver to us for this new console cycle. And you know I'm just here for the ride, man. I trust in them that they are gonna make something that's gonna be fun and interesting, and you know I just can't wait to see what they give us.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think the thing for me is like I'm very excited about this year in general, but the Switch specifically, just because like um I don't know. I think gaming, I guess, has never felt more connected, and like like for one, we have developers releasing games on other platforms more than they ever have. We have, like 5 years ago, it'd be crazy to think that there'd be this many PlayStation games on PC. I still forget and think it's crazy that Horizon Lego game came out on Switch. Um,
Yeah,
and so like maybe they're gonna do more of that. But then also, even if it just gets good third party support, unlike Switch One, we live in a world of crossplay now. So there's a world where you could, I don't know, like let's say maybe, I don't know, let's say maybe some, like I can't think of like what would be a great example, but like let's say like Helldivers 2 comes to Switch, and then you could go meet up with
boy.
your friend and he's got a Steam Deck, and you guys could still just be chilling out playing Helldivers 2 together. And it's like it doesn't matter that you don't both have a Switch. That it's like because crossplay kind of means that we live in a different world than when the Switch One came out. There's more possibilities.
Yeah.
Obviously, like for the Nintendo games, that's not going to apply. But the hope would be that there might be some fun third party stuff that would make it so that yeah, like I like the idea of people with Switches and Steam Decks playing games together.
I it's just good. I just love the idea is like, oh, there was couch co-op, and there's LAN parties, and then of course you had the online era, but then also it kind of reverted back to the, mobile gaming was like the big thing, and now I just love the idea of just like handheld future where it doesn't matter where you are, you can play with your friends online. Like you could be anywhere and it will just work, and you don't have to worry about it. It's I'm excited. I'm really excited. This is the kind of stuff I live for gaming, is just seeing what the future is going to hold for us.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I think that's yeah, maybe that's a good thing to like jump off of in terms of like maybe trying to wrap the podcast up of like I'm equally excited about this year in terms of the gaming in general and getting this podcast off the ground because I personally have
Hmm.
never done a podcast before in any capacity. I've always like thought about it, wanted to do one, and I didn't. I guess that's the struggle. Is like it's can be tough to either find a subject or find people who are gonna be as interested in a subject to be able to talk about these things at length week after week of like I definitely have friends who are into gaming, but I definitely don't think they don't watch kind of funny or similar content. They're not kind of like in as deep into like trying to pay attention to all the news and stuff.
Right.
And I think I guess that's the thing of like this has been real fun so far, and I can't wait to like have an outlet like this when we do start getting some of the exciting releases and announcements to be in a world where we have the Switch 2 in our hands and we can talk about it and stuff like that.
I agree. It's going to be a lot of fun, especially just as we mentioned, like at the top of the podcast, just like not only like us coming back every week having conversations, but also having other people come on and getting their points of view and like seeing how they feel about the topics that we talk about here, as well as just the topics that we kind of continue on from, you know, what kind of funny was doing throughout the week. And this I think we're in a good place. The KFBF community, uh, I think, has a lot of people that are like-minded, willing to have these fun conversations. Because I mean, look at us, like we're going almost like 2 hours, and it hasn't even felt like we've been talking for even like 30 minutes.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
like I was like wondering. I was like, oh, like maybe I'll try to pay attention to the time a little bit more. And then it was just like somehow our conversation feels like it should be that much longer than just a games cast or something, but it's like twice the length. I guess it depends on which games cast you're talking about, but yeah, it's like
hmm,
I think it'll be interesting of like I think initially I was kind of talking myself out of it a little bit of like, oh man, like kind of funny already puts out so much content. Like how many people are actually going to want to take the time to listen to another podcast? And then when we did this the last time and it was like about 2.5 hours, I'm like, oh, is that gonna be daunting to people? And just kind of having to come to the realization of like, oh, it might be, and like it might not be for everyone, but that's kind of like the idea is that it's here for those people that are interested. Once we've made it doesn't go away. It's just there for people to find and enjoy if
yeah,
they so choose. And I guess the other important aspect is like, while we hope that we're making something that people might latch onto or enjoy, the actual process of making it was fun, and that's that's no small part of the process, and that's something to consider. And I mean, I think just on that basic level, that alone is a success. That if we can keep having a good time doing it, then I think even that is reason enough to keep making it.
Oh, 100%. And like any process, like who knows, like how the podcast is right now as it is just beginning could be completely different in like 3 6 months from now. We never know where this is going to go, but like you're saying, as long as the journey getting to that point is still fun and enjoyable, I think that's what's the most important thing, you know, because what's the point of having conversations that we don't want to have? We'd rather have fun, together, us here, and then with everybody else that's either watching or listening to this, then wants to join in a conversation. That's always the best part is that this can go anywhere and everywhere, and there is no limit to what the guest bedroom can be. So it's kind of freeing in a way, at least in my perspective. Like, you know, let me know if I'm like off base or anything like that. But like I feel like the guest bedroom just has so much potential to just be a fun place just to come hang out and talk about whatever, whether it's like kind of funny related or gaming related, as long as we're all here in good spirits. I think that's what is going to be like the lifeblood of like of this podcast.
Yeah, I think that was well said. I definitely agree, and I think that is definitely going to be one of the most exciting parts about it, is just kind of building it out as we go, and with the community. I think that's one of the big ideas as well. Is just like, not only as a starting point where we try to have a place for uh, community members to go if they want to try to just be more informed and meet people that are in the community, but then just to build the podcast itself with the community and have people submit ideas and to have it evolve with everyone. And so, yeah, I think to wrap up here, for anyone that would like to be involved in the podcast, the easiest way to do so is going to be in the Discord, and those links I'll try to post just like the Discord links anywhere that you might be able to find the podcast. So like, descriptions in a YouTube video or in a podcast description. I did go ahead and make some social media accounts that I'll update and up link to this podcast on, but I do want to try to make it easy for people to like find a way to connect and on whatever platforms that they prefer to use. But in terms of getting involved, the Discord is going to be the best way, but you can also just like DM the account for the podcast as well, and we'll continue to kind of come up with ideas and build out the different ways that people get involved. I think, I guess, to end this, I guess typically I might shout out other things I'm working on. I'm not currently really working on other stuff right now. I have a lot of goals, ideas. I'd like to get back into streaming and stuff, but don't really have anything in that realm to shout out now. So I'll just shout out kind of other members that I have met in the Kind of Funny community, and places that I have been hanging out recently, and some cool folks that I've met that you could go check out if you're so inclined. One stream that I love hanging out in is Jim Tasty. He's got a Twitch stream that he does more often than not. Most nights he goes into the late night, which is good for me because I work late into the night and get home late and stay up late, and so sometimes we get some late night gaming in, and that can be fun. And then yeah, I guess just like there's been some other just streamers that I've like that hang out or get rated meet. It kind of just like spider webs from there. There's a lot of good people you can meet on Twitch. I guess a couple others I would shout out would be Sen Nuggies and Neo Ayoshi streams I've been hanging out in. A lot of people right now the Marvel Rivals craze is still
Oh,
very much alive and well, and that game has been so much fun. So that's where you might be able to find me these days. And yeah, other than that, I think I'd like to. It would be great for folks to eventually catch wind of the podcast and submit their own personal stuff that they've got going. So the idea, I think, for me is like anyone who wants to be on the podcast can be on as a guest, but there might be some people who either don't have the time or are not interested, and they could just send a message for me to shout out what they do, much like I just did. It'd be like, oh, go check out so and so's YouTube or their Twitch or whatever it may be, and I think that can kind of help us all connect a little bit more. But yeah, I guess with that, if do you got any last words, things you want to shout out, Brian?
you know, just you know, I hope everybody enjoys the guest bedroom and wants to uh, come join in on the fun because I think that's what the biggest plus about doing podcasting is like being able to communicate with other people and make connections as you're talking about. I think is like the biggest deal as far as doing this kind of stuff goes. I guess for me personally, like I said before, I also host another podcast called Unite We Nerd. We stream live on twitch.tv/Unite We Nerd on Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. Pacific time. So it's kind of breaching into like the late night a little bit, depending on how things go. Usually have like fun conversations about gaming and other kind of just like pop culture stuff. We also do gaming as well. Just a fun hangout time on like a Tuesday night for a lot of that. And of course, shout out to just everybody out there right now trying to make it through the week because I know it's a rough time right now. Like just know that especially you know right now we have a lot of things going on in SoCal, of course, being
Yeah.
from California. Know a few amount of people that are being affected by the wildfires there. So if anybody would please, do whatever you can to help out. Donate to any good cause that would go towards the LA, or even just like spreading the word about where you can donate. I know for us on United Work Podcast, we've been shouting out the LA Regional Food Bank has been doing a lot of good work for the people of LA. So go do that. It would mean a whole bunch to many, many people that are being affected by these wildfires. Yeah, doing just trying to do our best to, help out each other.
Well said. Yeah, I think any ways we can help out our peers and become more connected and all that is positive stuff. And yeah, I guess beyond that and beyond just kind of paying attention to those good causes you may be able to contribute to in your community or different communities, um, that something like this with the guest bedroom and the kind of funny community that can be the benefit of sometimes it is you've got a little bit of spare money to donate to something. Sometimes it's just sometimes your time or trying to interact with someone who may be
So the
in
social
need.
currency.
Yep, in need of community or support. That this can be a great outlet for that as well. So yeah, it's what we're trying to build here and shout out. And I look forward to what we can evolve this into.
Yeah. The door is always open here at the guest bedroom.
The door is always open. And with that, it has been our pleasure to serve you, and we will see you next week. Take care. All right, that was
Sweet.
solid. And
Hell yeah.
yeah, and barring any catastrophic events, I think everything should be good to go in terms of what we recorded and everything. Everything, nothing,
Nice.
nothing jumped out to me. Discord didn't crash.